Hope everybody is doing well. It's time for another edition of the Online Dinner Party, where we bring in exciting guests to talk about different things going on in their life, different things that they've got going on. I just came back from having lunch, and it was a very good lunch at a Asian restaurant, Sister Lou's here in Durham, and everything like that. A buddy of mine, we try to go out once a month, at least, sometimes more than that, and visit new restaurants and old restaurants and all along those lines. But this was definitely a good one. Even had a bamboo grove that was there as well, so definitely was enjoyable. And of course, the weather is just lovely and all in that space. It felt like it was about 60 degrees, maybe even pushing near 70. So even though we're in the middle of February, it was feeling very spring like here in North Carolina. I understand we're going to get some rain later on, but for right now, it's feeling real good and folks are enjoying that. Of course, some folks are getting ready to have some exciting concerts and people are following sports as well. Some people are following the Winter Olympics. I know that I saw that one of our curling teams got a silver medal. And ironically, there's a curling club here in this area, just like there's a group of folks that are doing roller skating and that competitive kind of roller skating and all along those lines. And there's all kinds of other interesting activities that people can do, including frisbee throwing when it's a nice day like it is today. But I'm going to bring in my guest for today, or at least one of them, and see what he's got going on in his world, because he's got a lot of things that he's talking about on that health front and all in that line. So how are you doing today, and how are things going where you are? Because like I said, it's definitely some very lovely weather here, and we're definitely enjoying the change in pace. And I think we're supposed to have this for a couple of weeks, even though there might be some rain in the forecast coming up over the weekend. But even with the rain, it'll be in the 50s and the 60s, maybe the 30s in the evening time. But during the daytime, it's some lovely weather, and I will not argue with 50s, 60s, and 70s in the middle of February and all along those lines. So how are you doing today?
Pleasure to be here, Mark. I'm doing well. It's a little chillier in Philadelphia. It's in the 40s, but a lot better than the negative temperatures we had last week.
Yeah, those negative temperatures and that snow, that was not the answer. I'm imagining that you're probably a fan of the Eagles, and they've done well in the Super Bowl. Didn't make it this time around or anything like that, but they have done well in the past and all in that space. Won a couple of Super Bowls in the past, but this year was the year for Seattle and everything like that. No Eagles in the championship, but maybe they'll be back next year.
Fingers crossed.
Keep your fingers crossed and everything like that. So I know that you've got a lot of things going on in the medical community and all along those lines. So I know that definitely folks would love to hear some of the new things that you've got going on. So if you'll share with our audience here on Pod TV, which is a network that my friend Nick Palveda and Kim Calhoun put together, some of the things that you're involved in and all along those lines. Because I know that you're also kind of pressed for time as well, which I understand because you're a busy man. And folks are going like, he can't be a doctor. He looks like Doogie Howser, like one of those young doctors and everything like that. So definitely have that imagery of being a young doctor, but we know that sometimes the young doctors can be the better doctors as well.
Yeah, I get there. I get that a lot. I'll tell you that I don't look this young after a long shift in the hospital. But no, it's an exciting time. I'm starting oncology fellowship at Johns Hopkins University, but I'm here with you today to talk about a new book that's coming out.
Right.
I'd written, it's coming out in 2 weeks. It's called Outsmarting Cancer, Risk Reduction and the Power of Prevention. And basically, I synthesize all the latest research on the very many risk factors in our lifestyles that increase our risk of cancer and what simple steps any of us can do in our daily lives to try and reduce it. Because we know now that as many as 50% of all cases of cancer and deaths from cancer worldwide are actually preventable. And it's so important that people know there's so much more to preventing cancer than just not smoking. And that's what my book is all about.
Yeah, and in that sense, what can people do to stop cancer, and what are some of the things that you're thinking about? Because I know that I'm a big believer in positive thinking. I've actually got a brother that's got MS, and he's had it now for a number of years. And actually, ironically, his aunt passed away of that disease, but she had it for about 20 or 25 years before she passed away. And I'm definitely hoping that my brother can make it that long, if not longer, because there's definitely a lot of treatments that are going on in that space. But sometimes people are afraid to go to the doctors because they're afraid of the diagnosis. I know some people that are not wanting to go to get checkups, whether it's for prostate cancer, or whether it's for colon or a number of other kind of cancers, because they are afraid of what the result might be, when we know that preventive care is very important. And even some of the things that you can do, like getting out, like I did earlier today, that fresh air was probably very beneficial to me, because a lot of times I'm stuck in the house doing this kind of work and other kinds of work as well. So what are some of the things that you're thinking that we as a people are not, I mean, as citizens of both the United States and the world, are not doing in that sense? And what does the book reveal?
Exactly. I'm glad to hear your brother's doing well. there have been a lot of developments in oncology, just like in the treatment of MS. And I think one of the big things, like you bring up, is that a lot of folks are scared to get the checkups that they need. Some of the most important actions that any of us can do is make sure that we see our doctor regularly, right? Get the colonoscopy, get the prostate testing, get the mammogram that you're supposed to get the vaccines you need, because if you're able to catch a cancer early in that window when it can still be cut out, you can be cured. But if you wait too long, and especially with COVID, a lot of people now have been, scared to go to doctors, just unable to keep appointments. If you wait too long and the cancer spreads, oftentimes it's not curable anymore. But besides just that, to your point, there's so many other small things in our lifestyles that can affect our cancer risk decades down the line. These include, more and more, we're learning obesity, right? So body weight, especially when it comes to diets high in processed meats, ultra processed foods, those like chips, cookies, all the stuff that they sell at the supermarket, which most of us are eating on the daily. Eating that in large amounts, if that's all the food you're eating, actually significantly increases your risk of cancer, as does being overweight, as does being physically inactive. That on top of alcohol, smoking, basically not taking care of one's body, being overly stressed, as you said, all of these things come together and they very likely increase our risk of cancer down the line.
And what are some of these risk factors? Because I know sometimes people talk about, you mentioned the body weight, and I know that I try to keep track of mine. I know that I am definitely considered slightly overweight and all in that space, or maybe even obese in some categories, but I'm not like heavy set in the sense of the way that some people think of that. But what should be the ideal BMI? Because you mentioned that for people, say somebody that's 6 feet, even, because I'm thinking that it probably should be somewhere in the 190, 200 range, and I'm probably closer to a little bit over a couple of tens of pounds over that.
Yeah.
Like that. So what is the BMI weight that people should be striving for?
Yeah, exactly. So the BMI that you aim for is between like 18 and a half and 25. Now, BMI is a ratio, so that weight depends on your height. To your point, I think for someone your height, maybe like 180, 190 is a good weight. But actually what matters most now is not so much BMI as this new concept called BRI, Body Roundness Index. And it's a funny kind of name, but what we know is that the fat that's around the abdomen, that central fat, right, that's actually the most dangerous kind of fat. So people who are heavier, but more of that is in their hips or in their muscles, that might not necessarily be bad for them. And specifically when you have that big belly, that fat causes the most inflammation, causes heart disease, causes cancer. So I think it's not so much targeting a weight as, keeping track of your waist size. Are your pant sizes getting bigger year to year? That's something that you should be concerned about and thinking about and talking to your doctor about. And nowadays, there's, besides all the important changes to make to diet, to exercise, there are all these new medicines coming out for weight loss that have been remarkably effective, and I think may actually lead to significantly fewer diagnoses of cancer down the line if they help a big proportion of the population stay a healthy weight.
No, that makes a lot of sense, and that's when. How much should people be paying attention? Because I know that even with the prostate and other things, people oftentimes don't want to pay attention, even though it's a bodily function that we all do on a regular basis. But how much should people be paying attention to their bodily functions when they're going to the restroom, whether that's urinating or whether that's defecating or whatever else they may be doing? But I know that sometimes people aren't even training and not even realizing that they're training, and that could be problematic and everything like that. So how much should people be paying attention to their bathroom habits, for lack of a better word?
I think it's very important to notice changes. I think one of the things that's very common for men as they get older is trouble urinating and emptying your bladder. And most of the time that's not dangerous. Our prostates just get bigger as we get older, and it makes it harder to push the urine out and get it all out. But if you're noticing new blood in your pee or your poop, right? If you're noticing that you have to strain to have a number two to use the bathroom, right? If something seems off and it's not getting better after a week or two, it's important to reach out to your primary care doctor, because those can be early signs of colon cancer, rectal cancer, prostate cancer, bladder cancer, you name it.
Yeah, and how much should people be paying attention to the frequency as well? Because I know sometimes people may have a lot of water intake. I know a lot of people now, as the weather is getting better, and definitely as we get further into spring, they'll be exercising. So a lot of people will be drinking regular water, but they'll also be drinking energy drinks and all along those lines. So how much should we be paying attention to the frequency as well?
Yeah, I think the frequency is also important, but it's really about It's about the changes, right? It's whether you're noticing that you're going more than you usually are, that you're having pain, that you're having blood, that you're having burning. And there's no right, for some people it's normal to go to the bathroom twice a week. For other people it's normal to go 5 times a day. It's really about the change from your normal that matters most.
Yeah, that makes sense. The change for the normal. You mentioned earlier, and of course, so there are a lot of them that are popular, like Ozempic, and a number of other ones as well. So, how much are these new pharmaceutical drugs that are helping the weight, making your job either even easier or making it harder? Because a lot of people are going to those kind of products. I'm even seeing products that are dealing with the prostate that are over-the-counter products, and I'm going like, I don't know whether you want those products when you should probably be going to your primary care doctor and everything like that. So, how much are we seeing the pharmaceutical industry getting involved in a lot of these fields that you are studying?
Yeah, so I think first and foremost, it's important to draw a distinction between pharmaceuticals and supplements,
Hmm.
right? Supplements do not get approved by the FDA for how effective they are. They can basically advertise whatever they'd like, and there really are no supplements that are proven to prevent or even reduce the risk of cancer. What they can do is interact with a lot of the meds that you're supposed to be on, and some of those interactions can be dangerous or even life-threatening. So it's very important to let your doctor know if you're using any supplements, and try not to mix things. Now, as to your question about the weight loss medicines, right? I think it's far too early to tell what the long-term impacts will be on cancer risk, but we do know that in the short run, these weight loss medicines are very effective at losing weight and keeping it off. And that reduces signs of inflammation. And it's very likely that 5, 10 years down the line, that may reduce the risk of these obesity-associated cancers. Now, it's also important to realize that these weight loss medicines are just one piece of the puzzle, right? They're a band-aid in a sense. It's not a solution in that if once you stop taking the medicine, the weight typically comes back. So what the ideal application of them is to use them in tangent with dietary modifications, increasing physical activity, focusing on wellness, so that you can actually change your lifestyles and your habits and your approach to food and keep the weight off in the long run, not just lose the weight in the short term.
No, that makes a lot of sense and everything like that. You mentioned earlier the food that people are having there. There's a lot of folks that are, particularly as we had the pandemic not that long ago, and a lot of people are saying we're still in the middle of it in
Mm-hmm.
some form or fashion or another. But a lot of people did get caught up in the fast food culture. I mean, there was already the fast food culture that was out there and everything like that. So, how risky is it for folks to have this diet that is very fast food and fatty oriented in terms of the battle against cancer? Because I'm thinking that a lot of us that are, and I'm guilty as well, rushing to DoorDash or Grubhub or a number of these other things are probably getting, in some cases, you try to get food that are healthy because there are healthy options
Mm-hmm.
among some of those, but there are also some very unhealthy options as well. And a lot of people are going for the quickness versus anything else. So, how much is that something that you're seeing in your studies and all along those lines?
Exactly. I think Americans consume the most ultra processed foods, right? About 70% of our diet is one of these ultra processed foods. What that entails is everything that's sold in the store with preservatives in it so that it has a long shelf life. It's cheaper, it's easier to manufacture and to sell, but it also, some of these chemicals are likely increasing our risk of cancer. And so we're talking about things like chips, cookies, right? Anything that you can get off the shelf that's not fresh, that has a list of ingredients, like a laundry list long, and doesn't contain any nutritional value, right? It doesn't have fiber, it doesn't have vitamins and minerals. It's just empty calories. And so the best thing we can do is to try and cut down on those foods. Now, when it comes to fast food, right, there's a lot of versions of fast food, right? There's better and worse, as you say. I think the things to keep in mind is that most foods that you get at a restaurant or at a fast food, they're very high in salt, they're very high in sugar. So if that's all you eat all day, you significantly increase your risk of heart disease, kidney disease, diabetes. All of these things interplay with one another with cancer risk as well. So really, if you don't have the time to cook for yourself, and many of us don't this day and age, it's important to focus on things that contain fresh fruits, vegetables, whether they're cooked or fresh, right? Meats like chicken, fish. Try and cut down on processed meats, deli meats, on red meat, and try and minimize things that are high in fat, high in grease. And there's not one specific food that's notoriously bad for you, right? It's a long run kind of holistic approach to maximizing the fresh foods and minimizing the processed foods. And any small, small dietary changes you can make day to day add up in the long run.
No, that makes a lot of sense. How much should we also be paying attention to our environment? I know that the other cancer risks can be in your household that you may not be paying attention to, because I know that some people will have a lot of ingredients in their house that can lead to cancer. Like you might have mold in your house or your apartment.
Mhm.
You might have certain detergents and certain chemicals that are in your house. Maybe even some things that you're doing to fight against insects and other vermin and everything along those lines that can be cancer related. So how much should we do a health checkup of our house and or apartment or whatever your living
Yeah.
dwelling is? Because I've heard a lot of people that are concerned about what may be in their house, like whether it's mold in the bathroom, whether it's other things that might be taking place in the house. Even some dust particles might be cancer related as well and everything like that. So how much do we pay attention to the health of our household in terms of this
Yeah.
cancer battle?
So the most dangerous thing that one can have in their home is actually a very common radioactive gas that a lot of people have in their basements called radon.
Mm-hmm.
And what you can do is you can look your zip code up online to see what the risk in your specific area is of this gas. But if you live in a high risk area, it's really important to get your basement tested. And if the radon levels are high, there are systems you can put in place, and there are actually government programs to get those funded or to get discounts in order to pump that radon gas out. Because radon is the second leading cause of lung cancer after smoking. So by and large, that is the most important environmental risk factor. Now, the other things you mentioned, mold can certainly increase your risk of a number of lung diseases, not necessarily lung cancer, but it's certainly not good to be living in a house with mold. I think the bigger question is the quality of the air and the water in the area that we live, right? People who live in heavily industrialized areas, if you live by a factory, you live somewhere where there's a lot of cars going by day to day, you're breathing in all that pollution. And we know in the long run that all adds up, and it increases your risk of lung cancer, bladder cancer, right? In some areas, the pollution is so high that it's as bad as smoking a few cigarettes a day. Right. So obviously not everyone can move. We don't always get to choose where we live or where we work. But if you know that a certain area is very high in air pollution, you can try and sometimes wear a mask outside, right? Your phone can often give you a score, a particle index score, which tells you how bad the air quality is outside. And if it's showing on a day that you have really bad air quality, say there's those fires going on in the summer and the air is all smoggy and dirty, just wear a mask when you go outside. You'd be surprised how many particles you can prevent from ending in your lungs just with a simple surgical mask.
No, that surgical mask is very important and everything like that, and all along those lines. I know a lot of people are also very much concerned when it comes to health about their mental health and their
Mm-hmm.
emotional health as well. So, how much of that weighs in on the cancer battle, and what is that finding in your studies as well? Because I know a lot of people want to make sure that they are mentally well and that
Mm-hmm.
can even play in their cancer battle. I mean, one of the great quotes I just saw was Lindsey Vonn, the skier who had that crash, but she was saying that she had no regrets, but she was also encouraging people to go after their dreams and to live up to their dreams. So she was having that positive attitude that a lot of people are thinking that we all need to have, and that can be very important in the cancer battle as well. So how important is it to have these positive vibes, even if you've been diagnosed with cancer or some of these other diseases? I remember I had a friend of mine that had a terminal illness. She has since passed away, but she lived longer than she was expecting to live because she always had that positive attitude about her journey and all along those lines. So, and I just learned when I was out with my friend that his father, who is in his 90s, is probably on his last days and everything like that. But it seems like he is going in a positive direction and is going with a positive attitude about his life. So he might even wind up living a few years, or maybe, well, maybe not a few years, but a few weeks past what they are expecting and all along those lines. So how important is that mindset to the whole battle against cancer or anything?
Absolutely. I think mental health is paramount to physical health. We know that people who are chronically stressed, it suppresses your immune system. And your immune system is the number one process that your body uses to suppress and prevent cancers. So it's very hard to say that being stressed one day or another day is going to significantly increase your risk of cancer, but living in constant stress certainly might. And especially for people who already have a cancer diagnosis, it's so important to maintain that positive outlook. As you said, there have been studies where just telling people that you're giving them a cancer treatment, even if you're not giving them anything at all, has shown that it may shrink the cancer itself. Now, that's not to say, obviously, treatments the treatments we have today are very effective, and it's very important to be receiving them and following with your doctor and everything. But a huge part of it is that positive outlook and keeping the mentality that this is a marathon, not a sprint. And it's you gotta kind of build up that resilience and stick with the process, stick with the treatments, stick with the doctors for the long run in order to see the results that you want.
Yeah, that makes sense. What are some of the number one causes? You mentioned smoking and definitely some of the stress elements, but what are some of the other causes that you're finding of cancer that people can try to regulate and try to control so that they don't have as much of a risk of cancer? So, in your research, what are some of the things that you are finding that people are not as aware of as they probably should be?
So as we've discussed, besides the smoking, there's body weight, there's obesity, there's alcohol consumption, there's processed meats, processed foods, there's exposure to air and water pollution, simple things around the house, exposure to microplastics from plastic water bottles, plastic cookware, cutting boards, exposure to even something like gas stoves has been shown to increase risk compared to electric stoves. So if you're cooking on a gas stove, just keep the window open to kind of ventilate the kitchen and try and prevent how many of those particles you're breathing in. So really, it's a very long laundry list of different things, and that's why I wrote a whole 400-page book on it. So books available online, Outsmarting Cancer, you can find on Amazon, on Hopkins Press. There's so many things that each of us can do, so many small changes we can make on a day-to-day basis that in the long run really add up for cancer risk.
They definitely got to find ways to do that. I know you've got another appointment coming up very shortly and everything like that. So I'll get ready to wind up so you can get to your other appointment and all along those lines. But what would you say, just really quickly, there's two questions I ask everybody. You actually alluded to one of them and everything like that, and all in that space. But definitely, if you could tell folks, because one of the things we do on this network is we like to give positive messages, and you definitely have that in your book. But what is the message of positivity that you would like to share with our audience? Because this is a global audience. We have listeners in Bangladesh, Australia, and a number of other places. So what is a message of positivity that you can leave with our audience? And also, if you could share your idea of how people can reach you and how they can get the book and where they can get the book at if they want to learn more about you.
Sure. I think the positive side of things is that your health and your life are in your control, right? So much that we're learning today is that our health is not predetermined by our genes. It's our day-to-day actions that make the difference. And so any small change you can make, whether it be wearing sunscreen, eating a healthier diet, trying to cut down on smoking or drinking, all of those add up in the long run. And if you want to learn more or read the book, it's Outsmarting Cancer. You can find it online. Just Google Outsmarting Cancer on Amazon. Or go to my website where I have all of my articles across major newspapers, adambarsuk.com.
I appreciate it. Appreciate you being here. Like I said, we might have some other guests coming on very shortly and all along those lines. But before you leave, just out of curiosity, what got you, because that's the other question I was going to ask that I didn't get to, into the medical profession and everything like that? Do you come from a long line of doctors? Because I know sometimes people are from a family of doctors, and I'm actually not that far from Duke University. So oftentimes, even in my apartment complex, see some people that are training in medical fields. As a matter of fact, I know that Anna is training in nursing, and that's actually one of my neighbors upstairs. And I sometimes will see her walking her dog, because that pet care can also be very important, or having companionship, whether it's pets or human, can be important in terms of positive health as well. But I was just wondering, how did you get into this whole medical profession?
Sure. I lost my grandparents when I was young to cancer, and they inspired me to get involved in cancer research. And more recently to train to become a clinical oncologist. And they also inspired this book and this project, because there's so many socioeconomic factors these days that are really affecting people's cancer risk. And I want to prevent families like mine from having to suffer these losses.
Yep. How old were your grandparents when they passed away? Because like I said, my friend, his father is in his 90s, and it looks like he's in his last days. But I've got another friend that is losing and speaking of cancer, I think it's one of the founders of the network, but they have a younger family member that it looks like they're losing their battle to colon cancer, and might be even this world, and they're going to have to travel to Puerto Rico to deal with that loss and everything like that. So I was just wondering your thoughts around how people can cope with the loss, and how old your own parents were.
My grandparents were 73, and that's fairly young, but now we're seeing people even younger in their 40s, 50s getting cancer more than ever before. And so that's why it's so important to do all the steps that we talked about and get the screenings, get the tests that are required. I got to go to my next appointment, Mark, but it was a real pleasure talking to you.
It was a pleasure talking to you as well. I've got a couple of commercials. We'll see if any of the other guests show up as well. But I thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. So you can definitely head on out. But definitely, I think we've got some great insights about cancer and everything like that. I know you got to get to your next appointment. So I'm going to play this one commercial that's about 3 minutes long and everything. What is your thoughts around teachers? So if you want to give me just your thoughts about the importance of teachers in general, even your own teachers. Well, he had to leave. So we're going to hear our thoughts from some of our other people about teachers and how they are important. So check this commercial out. This is about the importance of teachers and coaches.
The difference between thinking and doing and living in the 21st century. They teach us about being a real quarterback-oriented games. We don't have to just use video games and live in the shadows of good things because of them. We grow up with agility far larger and bigger than we are tall. Parents are the champions and have to be our first life coaches and know-it-alls. Who knows how this came to be? Coaches will ask you if you know your right foot from your left, if you know yourself, if you act knowingly good or bad, if you can move and negotiate a field with style and form, if you can tackle or throw a pass, or if your last name is that of a clown, if you can let someone know on the team that you are in trouble before you cause yourself or someone else trouble. If you are ready to learn teamwork or aware that you started out today with your pants down or your sportsmanship was left on the kitchen table, if you know the social studies, the alphabets, science, music, characters, and the stats and the numbers of a great student player eligible to stay on the team, and if you know the poise of great athletic champions and their scientific attitudes that are historical or music to us now, if you have the swag of the game, the discipline, the performance, and artistic form down pat, and if you have the style of gymnastics that the sport has with life, if you have the work ethic and determination to make it all seem easy, and not a game at all, if you have the knowledge of all the above, or you don't know things like this even make the difference. I think that when it comes to the importance of parents and their field and self-knowledge, wisdom, virtues, and courage, their teachings, love, respect, care that they illustrate on the field and in the grind of life with their actions and their ideas, experiences, muscle, and strategic magic and skills wrapped around us with their priceless love. For their verbs to be that make us winners in this hard and fast third century that without them, kids and adults, athletes could hardly see or do anything at all. Parents teach us the difference between playing video games and playing on the field. Parents teach us how to be champions. A huge hug should go to parents, coaches, and parent-like community people who have love on the field for you and who are champions for your life, both in and out the games.
We've got another amazing guest coming on, so I'm going to bring him on very shortly and all along those lines. So seeing what they've got going on in their world. That was the gentleman talking about the importance of coaches and teachers. I'm going to find out from Macaulay Cutler how important teachers were to him and all along those lines. So we've got another amazing guest that is joining us and all in that line. So we've got a lot of things going on in that space. So definitely share with me what you've got going on in your world. I just had the gentleman that was a oncology doctor, and he was talking about the importance of going out for those cancer tests and all along those lines. So he had to run off, but they were the first guest here at the dinner party because I invite various people. Sometimes we're all on at the same time. Sometimes it's one at a time and everything like that. So it's like a real dinner party. It varies. Sometimes it's one at a time. Sometimes it's one-on-one. Sometimes it's 3 or 4 at a time and everything like that, depending on how the guests decide to show up when I send the invitations. And yeah, I had to start a little bit earlier the show just because he had some schedule conflicts. So we started a little bit earlier than we usually do because we usually start right at 4 and everything like that. But how are you doing today and how are things going in your world? I was just saying it's a lovely day here in Durham, North Carolina. I actually just went out not that long ago for lunch and everything like that and was enjoying some of this lovely weather. I think we're probably in the 60s, might even be pushing near 70 and everything like that. So it was definitely fun to get out and about. So if you will, just share a little bit about what you've got going on, Mr. Cutler, and definitely we'll hear more about your products and the things that you are doing.
Thank you, Mart Lee. I just want to make sure my mic is working. And
it's working fine. I hear you loud and clear.
Great. Thank you very much. My name is Coley. That's spelled K-O-L-I right here, Cutler. And I'm a sign language interpreter. And I've been involved in so many settings, and teachers and education is one of them. And so when it comes to translating a language from spoken, which is linear, to a 3D in space conceptual language, right. Sometimes things get lost in the translation, but I try and minimize that as best I can. And we can go into all kinds of ways that I do that, but I don't want to get too technical too quick. I would rather talk to you about what's going on with what you thought that I would be representing. And
no, I appreciate that. And I'm glad you said that because I know we even saw some sign language interpretation during the Super Bowl. We saw some during the Olympics and everything like that. So sign language is very important. I've even seen it at some venues because I've been a venue host as well as been involved at the Heritage Center for decades and all along those lines, which is the African American Cultural Arts Center. And there have been some performances we've had. As a matter of fact, I think when we did our Christmas show, or actually the jazz band did their Christmas show, they had a interpreter, a sign language interpreter that was interpreted in those classic Christmas songs. And I think sometimes when the symphony has been there as well, there have definitely been sign language interpreters that have been able to let people know that maybe we're hard of hearing or couldn't understand everything that was going on in that sense. So ASL is very important, and a lot of venues are using that. Sometimes they'll even have aids, like if they got hearing problems, they'll have like the earphones where they can hear stuff if that is one of their issues, and all along those lines and everything like that. So I was just wondering your take on how important it is for venues to make themselves accessible to folks that are differently abled and everything. Because like I said, it might be that they're not always accessible in terms of like the wheelchairs and everything like that. And of course, people that are not able to, that need sign language, so they might not be able to see the understand the concepts the way that other people might be able to, so they need the sign language interpretations. But unfortunately, not everybody can afford a sign language interpreter and everything like that. So there's some venues that would like to have that for some of their performances, but they might not be able to afford them on a regular basis. So what are some of the things that you're seeing even smaller companies do to make themselves more accessible?
Well, here in Portland, it's very important to have accessibility, especially to language and public events like sports. So in Portland, they made it a law that everybody who's showing it on the TV has to put on captions now. And so that's streaming across the bottom, which is naturally and free, on the channels that have it. So everybody who has it has to turn it on. And that's been a great boon for the deaf people in Portland. So I see it all over the place.
How did you get involved in this? I mentioned the gentleman I had before. Part of the reason he got into cancer was because his grandparents had died of cancer. So that's why he got pushed into the field. I'm thinking maybe either you had some hearing issues yourself or you had family members with hearing issues. I do also know that it used to be that people used to love, when I was growing up in the 70s, there was people that just liked to learn sign language because it was something fun. And let's be honest, it was also a way to communicate without their parents knowing what was going on, because it became like the secret language and everything like that.
Yep. No, I had absolutely none of those to really fall back on for learning. I just happened to go to school and had one elective left, and I thought, well, what could I do? And tennis was full and swimming was full and sign was open. So I said, what is this sign language thing? And so I took it and found out that it was pretty cool. And I've always been kind of hands-on with everything I do anyway. So I took to it pretty easy. And there was a ton of deaf students at this particular college, because down the road there was a deaf school. So they would graduate from high school there and then come to the community college that I was in. And it was great. I was down there at the lunch cafeteria going, how are you, what are you, I don't and it was just completely overwhelming at first. And then once you get it, like any language, once you get it, you start getting smoother and you can start seeing the nuances and you can start doing some slang and you can start telling jokes in 2 languages, which is one of my favorite things. And there's other things that I learned that I had, which were superpowers.
Wow.
Like for sign language, I can talk to somebody in the next train car across if we're sitting in the station just by signing. Don't have to yell, don't have to move my mouth at all, just quiet, easy sign language communication, just like in a bar or any loud venue, concert, or in the airport, when you can sit back and relax and do this and people can understand you clear, no need to yell, no tension, no stress. It's a lot of fun. So that's a mini superpower, maybe.
There's many superpowers there. How much does sign language vary from culture to culture and everything like that? Because definitely I have seen some people that are finding that they can sign even in slang, and maybe it's a slang of a certain culture, maybe it's Asian slang or African slang or some of the other kind of slangs that are out there. So how much did you have to learn about cultural differences even in sign language? Because of course there's the universal sign language that everybody is aware of, but I'm sure that there are slang versions of sign as well.
Well, that's true. Every single language, just like Spanish or French or Chinese, has its own sign language. So there's French Sign Language, Chinese Sign Language, and so on. So I picked up American Sign Language and I learned American Sign Language culture. So when a lot of deaf people came from other countries that don't have as many options as we do here in the United States, that we would hear all kinds of stories of how their cultures survived and behaved. And I learned a lot too. So one example is in the American culture, we are individualistic and we try and succeed on our own, and we value the competence of someone who's achieved a lot of things and be able to provide a lot of things. But the deaf culture is the opposite in the way that they're very collective. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times you'll hear somebody say, oh, well, if you hurt somebody in the deaf community, you're hurting the entire deaf community. And I thought about this thinking, well, how does that even work? And now that I've been in total communication with all the aspects of deaf people and deaf community and deaf culture, that I know exactly what it means. And living in a way where you've got that much support no matter what, just because of your way you communicate, seems like a plus to me. And it's hard to actually translate that literally, not like it's not hard to translate in the language, but it's hard to translate that back to people that don't have this ability to sign with their hands. And we hear with our ears. So people like my family and my friends and a lot of people, most all people, don't really get how does it work when you've got 2 different cultures and 2 different languages, that you can do this thing and they can still understand you deeply and fully. And so that's what I cover in my book, which is, it's almost ready. And it's got a lot of stories about actual things, it's true stories that happened to me while I was working, that I went, wow, I never knew that. I never saw that. I never experienced that. I never heard anybody say that. And that's what I want to share with everybody.
No, that makes sense. How much do you think sign language helps people with empathy? We've heard a lot, even during COVID and everything like that, about the importance of empathy and all along those lines. But I'm thinking that in order to understand somebody that is deaf, and maybe they're trying to tell you about a health concern, or maybe they're trying to even tell you about a safety concern and everything along those lines, you've got to have a lot of empathy and all along those lines. So how important is empathy in this whole battle and everything like that?
Well, I think empathy is as powerful as the person who's willing to give it. Right. So kind of flipping the script on, who recognizes that this is empathy and understanding in the moment. If you talk to most deaf people, they're like, we are loud and proud and we have no problem and we are not disabled. And the only thing we cannot do is hear. Everybody else got a problem because our language is fine. if you don't understand it, then you should take a sign language class and learn more about it so that we both can have empathy for both of our situations and our struggles. You know,
Now, that makes
it's everywhere.
Yeah, that makes sense. How much do you think it is seen as how much do you think is covered in the media, and how much do you think the media does of addressing sign language? I was actually watching one of the newer shows. I can't remember what it is. I know it's got FBI in the title and it's got a woman's name, but one of the main characters is actually a deaf character. She's a deaf agent and everything like that. You probably know the show that I'm talking about and everything like that, but that's one of the few examples of a deaf character in TV and movies and everything like that. So how much do you think the television and movie industry is doing in terms of making themselves available to the deaf and making their opportunities available to the deaf as well? And even on the TV shows, you mentioned what Portland is doing. I watch the news regularly on our local newscast, and I don't know that they oftentimes have closed captions or have some of the other things. So if people are sitting in their house and they're deaf, they might be able to, some of them can read lips and they might be able to understand what the news stories are. And some of the networks may have closed caption, but there are others that don't. So they might be at a loss and everything like that. So how much do you think we can do in terms of helping folks with representation?
Well, we can always let our voices know to those who are in power and those who are making decisions in Hollywood. And it's been a lot better in recent years than it has way back when. The first deaf actress that won an Oscar was in 1986. Her name was Marlee Matlin, and she was in a movie with John Hurt. John Hurt. Yeah. And she won an Oscar. And so since then, sign language has been cool. And now we're seeing more and more people who have been in the sphere of Hollywood and arts and acting and dancing and poetry, etc., for a long time. But now we're starting to see more of them, and it's not unusual to see them on TV. There's one film that just won another 2 Oscars. It's called Coda, and Coda stands CODA, means CODA, which is Child of Deaf Adults. And those are kids that are hearing, that have deaf parents, and they know the culture. They speak sign language first, and they learn English second. So that movie was about a family going through some struggles with their daughter who was hearing and their son who was deaf, and the parents were deaf, and the daughter wants to sing for the rest of her life. And so they come to middle ground on that. And since it did so well, now there's a separate part 2, which is called Coda, the next verse. So I'm looking out for that coming out soon. We're seeing a lot more of it, and it's pretty cool, I think.
Yeah, it sounds like really cool. What are some of the interesting things that you've done? Because like I said, I have seen deaf people that have been at the Grammys. I've seen, not deaf people, but the interpreters at the Grammys. I've seen them at the American Music Awards. I've seen them at even some of the country awards. And definitely, like I said, some of the sports activities, whether it's been the NBA or whether it's been the NFL or a number of other things. But in terms of your own personal dealings with this field, what have been some of your most career-worthy goals or career-worthy things that you have done, and what are some of the things that are on the wish list that you haven't got to, but you hope to get to?
I can't really think of many that are on my wish list because I've been doing this so long. I think I've pretty much hit every setting. But I'll tell you, I've had some wing dingers in Hollywood. I would interpret for music concert at Hollywood Bowl, and one time Coldplay was playing. And before they started, they sent me out in front just to get ready so that when the band comes out, I won't be a distraction. And I'll tell you, it was a 17,000 person sold out show. Right. It's all in the mountains, in the natural theater style that they have. And as soon as I walked out there, everybody shut up and they all looked at me like they thought I was the band. I don't know what they thought, but here I was alone in front of 17,000 people, and I was soaking it up. I'm like, well, I'm glad I got your attention, but I'm not the main act. So they came out, did a great show, and then once I was done with the show, everybody was really happy. It was a great show. I come back around, and in the little room behind the Hollywood Bowl, very tiny little room, there's a bunch of people in there. They're filling it up, waiting for the band to come back. And I open the door and it gets stuck. And I try and open it up just enough for me to walk in. And there is Gwyneth Paltrow right in my face.
Wow.
This is right before Gwyneth married Chris Martin. And so she said, she was this, I come in the door and there she is, like this close. And she goes, hello. And I said, no words. I
No
could
worries.
not describe it, but I've been around Hollywood events and things, and you see stars everywhere in Hollywood. So it's interesting. It's an interesting place to cruise through and observe.
I'm
Like
sure.
another example that I have is where I was doing awards ceremony at a really fancy hotel somewhere in LA, and there were stars that were invited, and a lot of people were coming. And so I was in the green room, just taking off my coat, getting ready, and I came out of the theater area, and I was in the seated area, looking at the stage and just planning out how I would stand and where I would look and where I would cover. And so then one of the people who were coming to be honored, his name's David E. Kelly, and he is the writer for
Yeah.
LA Law
Right.
and so many others. And I had taught him sign language a while back. And so he's coming down the stairs with his entourage, and he sees me. He waves at me. I said, hey, how you doing? And as he walks by, I feel this little tap on my shoulder. And I look around, and there's Michelle Pfeiffer. And she goes, hello, my name is Michelle. And I grabbed her hand, and she was so beautiful. She was glowing just like in a movie. And again, I was speechless. I went, and on she went. And I thought about this later, and I thought, you know, everybody wants to be acknowledged, even if they're a superstar top world performer that's famous. And, with a schmo like me who doesn't know or doesn't have anything to put an Oscar on, she needs acknowledgement just as much as anyone does at work or in the family or whatever. And so it really hit me like I had the power to give someone acknowledgement that I would never have met unless I were doing this job. And it's important to everybody. So
No, it's very important. It's interesting you say that because he now lives in the East Coast. I think he's in Atlanta. But Petrie Bird, I would see him regularly at the National Black Theater Festival that was in Winston-Salem on odd years. And then the last couple of years, they're moving it to the even years. So it'll actually be in Winston-Salem this year, since this is 2026. I think it was 2024, 2022 that they moved it to the even years and everything like that because of the pandemic. So now it's on the even years, whereas for decades it was on the odd years, and it's every 2 years. But Petrie was known, that's the Bella from Judge Judy, for throwing these wonderful parties and everything like that. And it might be at a spa, it might be at a club or whatever, but he was even sometimes at a hotel, but he was known for these parties with some of the other Hollywood elites in the African-American corner. But he would oftentimes see me and be like, I know you're going to be at my party and everything like that. So you're right. A lot of times they want to acknowledge you and acknowledge the fact that you are a friend and or a close acquaintance and all along those lines. So it was always good to know that I had his support. And even when she was living, Mickey Grant would oftentimes tell me and encourage some of my writing skills. And she's the one that wrote several books and all along those lines. So definitely, you're right. A lot of times they just want to simple acknowledgement. They're not like looking
like
for
everybody.
anything. Because a lot of times they have to put on their clothes or their dresses if they're women, the same way that men and women have to do it that are common citizens and everything like that. Now, there are some that have egos, and I'm sure you've run across some of the ego ones as well. So we can't say that they're all sunshine and bliss, because there are some that have attitudes, and you do have to be aware of that. So I'm sure you've run across some that are not as much the nice ones like Michelle Pfeiffer and Gwyneth Paltrow, but you probably run across some others that were having a little bit of a ego trip. So I'm sure you've run across the ego trip artists as well.
But it's definitely pretty full of those types as well. But you know what? Just like us, just like any group, there's some people that are just really kind and shine, and there's other people who, are a pain. And we got to deal with that on different levels, no matter where we are.
No,
So
that's very true. Just out of curiosity, and I don't know your political standpoint, don't really care what it is, but has there ever been any time that you've had to sign something that you didn't necessarily agree with, but you just had to leave your political attitude to the side, whether you agreed with what they were saying or not saying, or how do you deal with that? Because I'm sure that whether you're a Democrat or Republican, whether you're into this issue or that issue, because Hollywood is definitely full of issue-oriented stuff, that there might be times that you were signing things and in the back of your mind going like, I don't agree with what you're saying, but I'm going ahead and decide what you're saying and everything like that. So I was wondering, were there any times that you had to kind of like put your own ethics in personal check and everything, because they might have been saying something that you were not necessarily favored of, but they were also paying you that bill and everything. So I just wondered.
Yes, that's a hell of a lot of times. You are asking me a question that almost no one has ever asked me, and I appreciate that, because that's a very important factor that we take on when we sign up to be an interpreter. If we're going to sign to what the spirit and the intent of the speaker is saying, we have to put our issues to the side, and that is our job. We cannot just give up and walk out, or we cannot interject and say something like boo or anything that would be distracting. We are there like a telephone, and a telephone, people pick it up and they don't say to the phone, hey phone, are you okay with me calling Joe? And then the phone's not going to say anything. We don't say anything either. So we are just a device to facilitate language. But I'll tell you what, I'm human. I have a mind. I have a tolerance factor. Many times I've thought to myself, don't roll your eyes, don't roll your eyes. And I keep on doing my job. And sometimes I'll get in like religious settings where there's hellfire and brimstone going on. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, we get the message, bring it down some, but I can't say that. So I go with what I'm hearing, and I follow what that speaker is trying to intend to bring on his audience, and I am at neutral zone the whole way. So many times, almost every day. I think.
I'm sure every day and everything. Now, for folks that are watching this show and everything along those lines, because I love having people that are in different professions, and that's one of the things that even we talk about here on the network is the notion of show business being a business and everything like that. And a lot of times people, when they're going into it, they don't understand the business aspect of show business. And I'm sure that there have been times that you have not charged what you were worth. I know that I've done that in my own life and everything like that. So I was just wondering, at what point did you realize that it was a business, the signing, and at what point did you realize that you could charge what you're charging, whatever that may be, and everything like that? And also, what advice would you give to others that are thinking they want to make this a career?
Okay, well, I learned right away. We had a strict code of ethics that we had to learn, memorize, and follow. And if we broke it even slightly at any turn, we were regarded as under some kind of review by our national interpreting body, which is called the Registry of Interpreters for the Deaf, which might compromise our license. And so I took it seriously for the first time in my life to be so neutral and so following the code of ethics so carefully that I would never even get thought of as possibly breaking it. And so that was a big step for me, because I'd never had a job with a code of ethics to it. But luckily, this job is like the opposite of most all jobs, in the fact that when you want to be an architect, you go to school and you learn how to do the work, and you carry a briefcase and you go knock on doors saying, I'm an architect and I would like to work for you. Here's my resume. Please call me. And that's pretty common. Not with interpreting. With interpreting, there is this many people that need interpreting, and there's this many interpreters. There's about 11 million people in the United States that have deafness or hard of hearing, and there's about 10,000 working interpreters. So that's so low that there's not enough interpreters to get access into hospitals sometimes, and legal court settings sometimes, and education. So we need more interpreters. So when I move to a new town, I tell some friends of mine that are interpreters, yeah, I'm going to be moving up to North Carolina and seeing some pretty ocean up there. And they're going to say, oh, let me tell at least 4 or 5 agencies that you're going to be there. And my phone starts ringing off the hook even before I arrive. And this is the nature of sign language interpreting. So whatever the rate is in the area that I go to, I'm automatically assumed that I'm going to be able to charge that rate. And so we all try and keep it professional, and the rate is a lot better than the minimum wage. That's for sure.
You definitely want to get back to the minimum wage, and hopefully you're making some rates that are up there. And I'm sure that depending on what the job is, because I know, like you said, the courtrooms oftentimes need people that are doing interpretation, because sometimes the either the victim or the person that is being charged with the crime may have some issues around their hearing and need to have some interpretations as well. And of course, even in North Carolina, there are several court systems, and I'm sure that many of them don't have an interpreter, and all along those lines. So what is required to be an interpreter in terms of training, and how difficult is it? Because one of the things that I know Nick talks about is that there are a lot of jobs out there that he sometimes argue we should not be out there because they're not really making wages and not making living wages for people. He'll sometimes tease and use the archaeologists, even though I'm a big buff of history, so I think archaeologists are important. But I do know that sometimes one of our founders will tease about some of these jobs that are not necessarily your lawyers, engineers, and doctors that we know make the bulk of the good money and everything like that. Not saying that there aren't people that are making good money as interpreters or even as actors, but sometimes there's this notion that certain careers are not worth the training that you have to go through and everything like that. I'm not a big fan of that attitude, but I know that attitude exists out there. So what do you say to folks? Because I'm sure even when you came up to your folks and said, I'm going to make a career as an interpreter, they were probably going to and looking at you like, can you actually make money at that and everything like that?
An interpreter. That's exactly right. I'd say we're in the middle between getting a job that's low wages and not worth the struggle, and the professionals like doctors and lawyers that have to get training all the time and keep their CEUs current, etc. We don't have any kind of demand on us other than we're competent with the language. And if we're competent with the language of the culture of deaf people, then we're going to do fine. And so we have to keep up CEUs as well. And so we go to large, excuse me, conferences where we're meeting other people. We're talking about the newest, latest thing. We're talking about the ways to reduce stress and still communicate clearly and all the things in our field. And yet anyone can do it, or anyone is able to try and do it. You got to be a people person. You got to love language, because if you're struggling with language, then this is not the job for you. But if you're able to keep up with people who can speak as crisply and quickly as you, well, then we need to be a pro at our job. So I would say we're right in the middle, but I don't know about the pay grade, where there's a certain standard that's local in every state or every city, and we go with that. I would say it's mid to high in terms of hourly, but we have an hourly job. We don't get vacation. We don't get any insurance. We have to pay for our own car maintenance.
How much is there the nature of the gig economy? Because I got friends that are musicians and all along those lines, and I know a lot of times they can't live just off of their music job, so they have to wind up doing things in other fields, whether that's Grubhub, whether that's DoorDash, whether that's other like Uber and Lyft and stuff like that. So are you able to survive just off of the money that you make as a sign language person, and that's not just you, but others as well? Or do you feel that you have to have other jobs in your field in order to, in general, in order to succeed?
For me, it's been 45 years if I've been able to sustain. I've been able to live on the money that comes from interpreting alone, even though it's a 1099 income. So I have to pay all my taxes up front. But it's really kind of the opposite again in this way, that a lot of people have used interpreting as their main hustle and then go try and be an artist or a musician or a sculptor, or things that don't give much money until you get to a certain level.
Right.
Interpreting is stable and there's always a need. So a lot of people that I know that are interpreters have some other side hustle that we all say, well, great, do it. That's great. I moved to Hollywood so I could get into film and television, and I interpreted, but I was more focused on in television and movies than I was interpreting, but it worked out because I got to experience both.
what are some of the successes you've had in your own profession? Because I'm thinking that not just signing, but you also maybe had some of your own acting gigs and everything like that. So have you done any of your own acting? And if so, what might people have seen that you were in and everything like that?
Yeah, I was down in LA for a long time, and I would audition all the time for things that had my makeup and my age range and things like that. And one day they had this show that required a guy to know sign language because there was a girl on the show who was beautiful and she was hard of hearing and she was going to get married. And guess who won that role? I had a blast and I met a bunch of stars on the set, and it was the first time for me. And I was thinking, it's all because I knew sign language that I got this chance to be considered in something that I never would have gotten if I didn't know it. So that was a fun gig.
Oh, cool. What was that movie?
It was a television series called Seventh Heaven.
Seven,
And it was prime time, so I got my own trailer, and I'm telling you, it was like to the nines. Everything was beautiful, and boy, I'll never forget it.
It sounds like you got some good memories about that and all on those lines. Now, I would take that in high school, and this was a long time ago because I'm in my about to be mid 60s now. We'll hit 64 in July and everything like that. But I was just wondering, there was a time when I was in high school that foreign language was my nemesis and everything like that. So how important is it to have those kind of language skills? Like I said, I'm very good at writing English and speaking the regular English, and definitely am good in the radio television world and all along those lines, because I've been doing this podcast and stuff for about 6 or 7 years. And then before that, I've done radio and done event planning and done MC work. So I know that I'm all right with. But even to this day, and I've got friends, including one on this network, that has a Spanish show and everything, but I've never been good with foreign language and everything like that. So do you need to be proficient in the other languages in order to be proficient in sign language, or can you be proficient in sign language and not be good in French and Spanish? Because French and Spanish kick my backside. I'm gonna be perfectly honest.
I'm with you. I had the opposite experience again, where in high school I couldn't even catch Spanish. It was too hard for me. And French, forget about it. I hated language. It was like not my world. And then I went to college and learned this thing that was like a different animal. It was not language, it was direct communication in 3D space where you feel the message. It was a different kind of a feel. It was a different kind of material to be able to move your hands and be able to communicate ideas that were abstract, that were interesting, that were in the future, that were in the past. And with a linear language like French or Spanish, I couldn't do that. And those words just didn't make sense to me. So I started to really love language after I learned sign. And now I'm like, I got to learn some more languages because that's really cool, but they're really hard. Sign language was easier for me, so I lucked out.
Yeah, it sounds like it. And maybe I'll get to learn sign language. I remember when I was in school, in grade school and everything like that, sign language was considered hip. People like to learn sign language. Now, part of the reason that sign language was cool, and we have a guest or a regular panelist on this network that used to write for Jimmy Kimmel, and he was also involved in a number of other things, that being Rick Rosner and all along those lines, because I think he won a suit against Jeopardy because he had the right answer and they claimed it was the wrong answer. It was one of them shows. I think it was Jeopardy, if I'm remembering correctly, and all along those lines. But I know that part of the reason that people like sign language, because it was and I hate to use this term, but I'm just going to use it because I think you'll get a kick out of it. In the 70s and 80s, it was a pickup tool because people would definitely think that it was cool and hip to know sign language. And sometimes they would even sign language to each other, or some of the intimate things that they might want to do if they knew those kind of things and everything like that. So I just wanted your take on that, because I have heard people even back then say that part of the reason that they got into sign language was it was a hipster kind of tool, if I can use that term.
I think there was a factor of people that would do that and try that. And, it's kind of cute in the broad view, but it's a little bit low grade if you're going to try and pick up someone by pretending, or just because of the fact that they're deaf. That it gets down to, wait a minute, what? That was the original reason? But I have to be honest, I have had my experiences of being in the mix. And so sometimes if I had a deaf girlfriend, which I did, people would ask me, so what, what's it like in the dark? How do you how do you communicate, like intimate things when you can't see each other? I said, we have ways. There's that's not going to stop anything.
Right.
So there is that factor. And I think if people want to have fun with it and they're open with it and they're okay with it, and that's exciting, then why not?
Right, that makes a lot of sense and everything like that. Because I know you mentioned it earlier, this whole notion of being differently abled and everything. I did have some people that were part of a contest. I think it was one of the networks or something like that. There was actually, or maybe been a organization, but they were having different people that were differently able to create movies and all along those lines. And we had some of them on not that long ago. I think one of them was, or a couple of them were out of New York and everything like that. So they were doing movies, even though they were differently abled. I think one of them was in the wheelchair. I think there was one that was blind, and there was definitely a couple that were disabled. As a matter of fact, it was one of my better shows because some of the shows will have multiple guests. And that show, I think that we had a guest that had been involved in another thing that happens in life, which is people don't oftentimes think about the victims of crime that we don't always think about, which is there's the victim, but then there's the family of the victim. So she was the family of somebody that had been murdered and everything. And it was interesting because if I remember that show correctly, some of the people that had been differently able had some of those problems with their own family and stuff where they were the other victim in the crime. And then it turns out that and these were all people in the arts. It turns out that the person that was involved in that being the other victim in the crime was involved in acting and had some acting background. So it was like kind of that cross communication that was going on between them and everything like that. So that was just one of the fascinating shows we've had with people that have been differently abled. And I think that was about 2 years ago or something like that and everything like that. But I just wanted, we still have people using the term disabled, even when they're talking about people that are having hearing issues. And sometimes the hearing issues can vary. There are those that are severely have severe hearing, like they can't hear hardly anything. And then there are those that are have lighter loss in hearing, like they can hear some stuff, but it might not be as much as the people that are considered totally well with their hearing and everything like that.
That's
so
right.
How much is that a factor? And what do you think about this whole notion of being labeled for those that are disabled, differently abled versus disabled? Because I know that was a whole conversation I had even with those past actors where they do it like, the only thing this different that I've got is that I have this ailment, whatever the ailment may be and everything like that. But other than that, I'm just the same as you and anybody else and everything like that. So which is when I think they came up with that term of differently abled. But I just wanted your take on what is the correct word, because a lot of people don't like the word handicapped.
Right. It's out of fashion these days. And, a lot of times you'll see, or you'll hear people say, well, this person's blind. How can they walk downtown? Well, there's different levels of blindness, just like there's different levels of deafness, and there's different levels of everything else that we face too. Sometimes we have a bad knee and we can't go down steps, and we disabled, or we just have a little tougher time trying to get where we want to go. So it leaves open a space where there's a lot of unknown things, because there is, like you say, profoundly deaf people. They can't hear an airplane go by. They are completely deaf, to the people that are hard of hearing and they just need a little help with a hearing aid or something, and they can still catch what's going on with the lips. And there's a big myth that people can just either read lips or they don't understand reading lips. Well, reading lips, at the best that can be done by anyone who's great at it, it's about 30%. So you can get this much of this much, and you cannot depend solely on lip reading. And people don't know that. They say to me, who as an interpreter, oh, that's okay, we'll take care of it. He can read lips. And I say, So here's an example. I'm going to say a word to you, and I want you to tell me, and I'm going to voice it for you, but I want you to read my lips and tell me if you can catch what I'm saying. Understanding.
Understanding?
Yeah, watch my lips. Understanding. They didn't move.
Right.
And that's not going to be very helpful. So there's hard of hearing people that can't hear much, and there's hard of hearing people that can hear a lot.
Right.
And there's some deaf people that are really smart, and some deaf people who never went to school. So we have all of these levels and fluctuations of how people are, can perform. without some label on all of them. And that's society. So we try and advocate. So when we're in a setting and there's people, and I mentioned, oh, well, the best lip readers can only get about 30%. They go, oh, really? I didn't know that. Well, guess what? Tell your friends, because relying on lip reading is not a good service for people who need an interpreter.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense and everything. Now, the other thing that I've heard people say a lot of times is that if you lose one sense, that the other senses will improve. And I don't know that that's always the case. Like, you'll hear people that will say that those people that are deaf, and particularly if they're profoundly deaf, will have a greater sense of smell or a greater sense of sight or some of the other senses as well. So I just wanted, in your own observation, how true is that? Because you're working with a lot of people that are everything from profoundly deaf to those that are just slightly hard of hearing and everything like that. So what is your take on that? If you are losing one sense, does the other sense automatically improve in a greater sense?
I would say yes and no. From what I've seen, and I don't know, I'm split on this issue, because I don't really think that a sense can automatically take over from another sense.
Right.
However, when you can't hear, you practice looking a lot more than usual, than other people might. And so I think that their eyes have elevated in terms of catching things that maybe sometimes you or I wouldn't catch.
Right.
And so that's good for reading sign language, especially if you're moving your hands this fast. They go, yeah, I got it. And I'm going, wait, slow down. So their eyes are more acute with smaller things just because they've been practicing it for longer. I think if I went deaf, I would start off at the bottom of the stairs trying to lip read, and then I'd probably get better and better at it, because like anything, if you practice it, you get better at it. Yeah. So that's my take. Maybe people who are blind can smell better. I don't know. I haven't really mixed with that crowd, so it could be possible.
It could be, and like I said, even those people that have got that hearing issue, they may. How much do you think venues? Because like I said, I work at a venue, and I know we've got to do better. It's a small 400-seat theater. Matter of fact, Branford will be there on the 24th. Branford Marcellus, and we just had Brandy Younger, who is a harpist, performing everything. And then we do have some things that we make available for folks that are hard of hearing and everything like that. But we could probably do better and everything like that. But how much do you think venues in general, and even school venues, are doing a good enough job of trying to make sure that they are accessible to those that are deaf, whatever their form of deafness is, whether that's profoundly deaf or lightly deaf? How do you think we as a society are doing in terms of addressing accessibility?
It's a struggle. And you know what? It's like we look back 200 years, 250 years, 280 years of our country's history, and how well are we doing? A little bit better. We try and spread the word and say, well, look at all these people that can do all these things. And so that's a big difference than back in the day when people who had to use a wheelchair weren't even allowed out of the house. And there's this whole thing of parents are shamed because they had some kid with a disability, and so they're being punished by God and this and that. And so it's been really hard for people who have had issues like this to get out and say, no, I'm a normal person. No, nice to meet you. How you doing? Yeah, hey, I can do stand-up comedy in a wheelchair, and people have done it now. Even people without a voice use the little machine and go, hey, how are you doing tonight? And they use this machine and they do this thing, and they're hilarious. They're on America's Got Talent and everything. So we're starting to see more and more of it, but we really advocate as much as we can, as wherever we can. And so one of my goals with this book that I've written about what goes through the mind of an interpreter while we're working and when we're not working, about how we bridge these two cultures and language, is it's dependent on more and more people becoming interpreters to fill the gap. That's one thing, but it's also awareness. If more people were like you and I, who can say, oh, well, you know what? Deaf people are just like people, and deaf people do this, and blind people can do this and that. We would have more and more and more people saying, yeah, what's the big deal? So I am hoping that when new interpreters read this book of mine, that they're going to see all the things that I've done that are just crazy busy. I mean, I have hundreds of stories, but this is a collection of 36 that are like, you know, mind-boggling, and the power of human connection is what I focus on. That they're going to think, you know what, I'm going to do this thing, and it's going to take me a few years to learn, and that would be one more person that we have in our corral that will help this issue of more people need to understand people that haven't been understood through history.
Yeah, that makes sense. I was just looking earlier because I got a text at my phone and all along those lines. And I remember back in the day watching Gilda Radner and her phone interpreter and everything like that. Or maybe it was like common. It was one of those old actresses and everything that had that phone interpreter and everything like that. And of course, the ones on Andy Griffin Mayberry being from North Carolina and everything like that. But I just wondered, how do you think the phone companies are doing in terms of making themselves accessible for those that are hard of hearing? I do know that some of the phones, particularly some of the modern iPhones and Androids, do have closed captions and other ways that they can interpret it. But even as my own mom has said, because mom is getting hard of hearing, the interpretations aren't always that accurate. And sometimes even when I call her, she'll be like, "You said such and such," and I'm like, "No, that's not the message I left."
Yeah, I think just because of technology, they've been doing great. Because there was no telephone. Interestingly enough, Alexander Graham Bell invented the telephone to help deaf people because his mother was deaf, and he married a deaf woman. And guess what? The telephone took deaf people out of the picture because they can't use a phone. But now we have video. Mm-hmm. And there's video phones, and you could get a video watch, and you could be taking your phone in your car going, "Hey, I'm almost there. Hang on." And that's something that deaf people were never able to do 20, 30 years ago, you know? So yeah. I think it's great. They think it's great. You know, they used to walk however far in the neighborhood and knock on someone's door, and the deaf person was in there not hearing the knock. So they had to bang on the door, or they had to turn the lights on and off. There was all kinds of things just so that they would come to the door and open and go, "Oh, hey, what are you doing here?" "Well, I walked 18 miles just so we could catch up. Haven't seen you for 6 months." And that was the way it was. And now it's, hey, blah, 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 on the video phone. Yeah. People don't have to do that anymore.
They don't do that anymore. But what do you think about the interpretation aspect? Because that's the thing that, as I mentioned, even when I talk to my mom, the interpretations are, and not just me, but even I have a younger brother. Sometimes we're going like, that is not what we said. So sometimes the interpretations that AI tries to do of some of this, because some of this is AI created, is right, off and everything, because it's trying to interpret what you said. And some of it is also the speed of your voice, the nature of your voice, and everything like that. So it's trying to catch what you're saying. And I don't know that it always catches it correctly. So
yeah, I don't think so either. I've seen some glitches, but you know what? It's a lot better than having zero captions at all. You know,
that's true.
So when deaf people watch something that has music in it, and the little thing comes up in parentheses saying ominous music, that doesn't mean anything to a deaf person. What's ominous music?
Right.
Harmony? Hominous? There's harmony bit seeds in it? I don't know what. They're doing as good as they can while we're getting better at it.
They're getting better at everything. I know one of the things I talk about on this show is the work-life balance, and that's with a number of guests, whether it's people that are differently able or whether it's some of the guests that are just in different fields and everything like that. So with knowing that the kind of work that you're doing, how has it been with your work-life balance and everything like that? Like, I don't know if there's a significant other, it doesn't really matter, but just in terms of, or kids and everything like that, but how do you balance? Because I do know that signing and sign language can be a very busy field and everything like that. So how do you balance that work-life balance?
You are asking some great questions. This is very rare that people get this deep into opening up what we deal with. I think it's been great because I have been able to make my own schedule. And so if I want to work at night, I can work the 5 to midnight shift. Or if I want to go in early, I can show up at 4:30 at the postal processing center and work until 9 o'clock. You know, I can work around whatever else that is I'm doing. And also I can say, you know what, babe, I'm going to take Thursdays off so you and I can get ready for the weekend and have, our plans laid out. So we're not texting each other and misunderstanding without getting together and being together when we plan. So it's been great for me personally, because I've had so many experiences that I just come away with going, oh, yes, I would never have found this unless I was working. Here's an example. I used to do a lot of psychotherapy with children and with adults and with groups, etc. So there was this one woman who was going to see a female shrink, and I was the only interpreter available. So they said, can you come in and interpret? So I'm sitting there right in between these two women talking, right? And so the therapist would say, yeah, well, how do you feel when your mother ignores you when you've made, 4 requests, before? And she would say, da, 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 and I'm voicing. So she's listening to me, and I'm watching this, and I'm getting like misty in the eyes going, my mom does that to me too, but I can't get involved in their therapy. So then they had this secondary experience. So they had 12 people line up in a circle, and the one person would go in the middle of the circle, and then all the people and the person in the circle had to pick a year of their life, like when I was 4 years old or when I was 8 years old. That's all we get. Okay, so this one girl says, I'm 4 years old, go. And all the people start saying to her things that would be really nice to hear if you were 4 years old. We're talking to the inner child here, right? And some people are saying, oh, you're such a pretty girl. Oh, we're so glad to have you in our family. We're so glad you're a girl. All these things that somebody has never heard before and probably missed their entire life of, I've never had this kind of community support. And everybody starts coming closer and closer in as they're giving these support sentences until they finally get to her, and they're holding her up. She's supposed to spin around, and we're holding her up, and I'm in the line, and I'm interpreting what they're saying at the same time. So I was definitely involved. And when she was there, she was crying like you've never seen somebody cry, like, oh, this is a revelation. And I'm thinking, I'm getting free therapy just from being here, and they're paying me to come. So some gigs are worth working off hours. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there was some off hours, but an amazing story that you got that experience. And as you were saying that, I was just wondering, have there been times, kind of like with the political one, where you have been caught up in interpreting harsh things to interpret and everything? Because you mentioned that one, I'm imagining that you have been being there in Hollywood at times involved in divorce issues and everything, where maybe one of the partners is deaf or maybe both of them are deaf, and I'm sure that can be difficult and everything like that, because you're hearing them go at each other and you're interpreting them going at each other with the lawyer in between and everything like that. So I'm imagining that you've been in those environments too, and probably even some business negotiations as well that might have been harsh.
That's true. I have stories about business negotiation, and they're tough to get through, but we sign up for the general public when we work. And when we meet great people and intelligent people and charming people, we go, this is a cool gig. And then when somebody's like, not happy, we are professional about it, and we act as a telephone. And the telephone doesn't discriminate if I want to swear or if I want to say, I love you, I love you. I did one phone call. I was doing video interpreting where I've got a video camera just like this, and then in my ear I had the phone, and people would call me up on the video that were deaf and say, call this number 555-0214, and I would call this number and they say, hi, Domino's Pizza, and I would interpret that, and they'd say, yeah, I want a medium pizza. What's your address? And then I give them the address, and then I hang up, and that person's getting their pizza. Well, one time a female came up on the screen and said, call this number. I called this number, and then the person who answered sounded like they were in a big warehouse, a lot of noise, a lot of echo, and the guy says, yeah, well, how can I help you? And so she says, oh, hi, honey. I just wanted to let you know that I'm going to pick up the kids after lunch. And so I had to say, hi, honey, I'm going to pick up the kids, right? And so at the very end of the call, she says, all right, well, thanks so much, honey. I love you so much. Thank you. And I said, I love you so much. And he went, thank you. I love you too. Because I was in the middle of it. So I'm doing my job, but you get caught up in little bits of it. Sometimes I just have to not roll my eyes. And sometimes I have to say, you know what? This person has the right to be mad. And I get pissed off sometimes that,
Well, I gotta ask you this, and I know this is a weird question to ask, but have you ever had a sign language? Because I know I've got friends that are Uber drivers, and they've had unusual drives. Like I think one of my friends, when I was taking an Uber locally and asked him the further he went, he had gone to New York like at an off hour. So more than likely that was a drug deal. Let's be honest, and everything like that. So I just wondered, have you ever had people that have called you, they wanted you to call, like say maybe their dealer or something like that, and that you had to sign that as well? So have you ever had that situation also?
Not drugs, not drug dealers, because there's too much in the open to get yourself an interpreter and walk along the street saying, hey, anybody. But I did have this one phone call where this guy was lying on a couch or a bench or something. So he was on his side like this, and he comes up on the video and he says, dial this number. And so I dialed the number. And so she said, hello. And he said, hey, Kiki, what's going on? And she goes, oh, not much. And I'm wondering, where am I? What is this phone call? What am I approaching? And he would say, oh, everything's cool. Yeah. And okay, I've got to go. Okay, take care. Bye. And they hung up, and he goes, call another number. And I thought, I didn't understand what environment I was calling. So he calls, another younger girl answered. Oh, hey there. And he says, hey, how's it going, girl? And she said, oh, I'm fine. When did you get out? And I went, oh, now I know what I'm doing.
Calling his girlfriend and everything like that.
Because he'd been writing to in jail, and he's finally out now. He wants to call them all and see who's who, see who's doing what. And I thought, you know what? This guy has the right to do that. I guess, they're going to do that. I have to remain neutral about what he's doing, who he's doing it with. It's their phone call. It's their life. They can hang up. They can say no. And yet that's where I'm dipped into the middle going, okay, interesting environment here again today.
Interesting environment. Speaking of interesting environment, we'll bring in our third and final guest. It's actually one that Aries had told me about and everything. And you probably signed for people like him because he is a rapper and all along those lines. I'm trying to remember where Young Han is out of and everything like that. But we're going to bring him up, and hopefully he'll come up and have some thoughts around some of the things that he's doing as well and everything like that. So definitely, hopefully there he goes and everything like that.
Thank you, Mark Lee. This has been great. And I look forward to podcasting with you again sometime.
Yeah, I look forward to it as well. Well, one of the things I get everybody to do before getting out of here and everything like that, and maybe you can tell Young about your sign language experience if you want to stick around for a few minutes and everything along those lines. But I'll give every guest a chance to tell about their how they can be reached and where they can be found and their message of positivity. I did that with the doctor.
Sure. It's kind of a niche that not a lot of people actually engage with, other than those who need interpretation. But I do sign language interpreting in all settings: courts, schools, churches, and education. Any setting that you can think of, deaf people are there. Deaf people are CEOs and owners of companies and doctors and lawyers, et cetera, et cetera. So I've seen it all, and I couldn't have asked for a better career.
I appreciate it. And what's your message of positivity for the overall network? And for those that are watching, we do have people in Australia, Bangladesh, and a number of other countries as well.
When you look at someone and you think, oh, they're different, they're using a wheelchair to get around, or their facial makeup is not what you're used to seeing, you realize at some point they have a heart and they have a soul. And knowing that gives our perspective a little bit more open, wide open acceptance for people that you don't notice something is wrong. But we all have grief and sorrow and disappointment, and we all have love and goals.
I appreciate it. Young Han, I know that Aries had told me that you were going to be coming on as well and everything, and I know that you're involved in certain businesses and all along those lines. So share what you've got going on in your business world and some of the things that you're doing. I've had a doctor on, of course, I had the sign language on earlier because I try to bring different people and we just share and learn from each other.
Oh, wonderful. Thanks for having me. I appreciate the time and opportunity. So I'm mostly focused on two things: is really trying to build businesses at scale, and then helping more Americans start their business journey, and hopefully helping more Americans enter the middle class and through business ownership as an asset class. And that's kind of my goal and my aspirations in the latter part of my life. And I'm doing it by doing it myself and walking the walk and doing my own journey of building businesses at scale, and then hopefully teaching other people how to do it. But so I currently own and operate 14 businesses, and I'll be starting 4 more this year, and then trying to get to 20 in a 5-year span, and then yeah, start teaching people how to do it and showing them that it's possible because I did it myself.
It sounds good. What are some of the businesses that you own, and what advice would you give to folks that are in the business space? Because we were just talking about that, even with Coley and everything, because he's got that whole sign language in business. So, what advice would you give to folks that are thinking about going into business and get into that middle class?
If they're thinking about starting a business, I would say keep thinking, think really, really hard about it because it's one of the worst things you could do to yourself is start a business. It's very, very painful. It's very risky, and it's very hard. And you probably can make just as much money with no stress or a lot less stress doing the same function as a W-2. And that's what I would say. Just think really long and hard that you want to do it because it's going to be a long journey. And then the second thing is keep it simple. Don't overthink your business. The business wants to be successful. Just focus on being mediocre at everything.
Are there any
Focus on
are there any certain businesses that you think are more successful these days or less successful these days, and everything
Sure.
like that?
Sure. Yeah, yeah. I mean, you could do the macro analysis for sure. I mean, there are statistically better businesses to start right now. Like the number 1 and 2 certified jobs that are being decreasing astronomically right now by signups from the youth is accountants and plumbers. So either one of those they're just going to get more and more expensive. I mean, plumbers, they're expecting plumber rates to go get higher than a lawyer rate, right? So the hourly rate for a plumber the next 7 or 8 years is going to go to like $500 to $800 depending on your geo. And accountants are a dying breed. I mean, there's no more accountants at all. No more young people are becoming CPAs, and it's still a regulated certification. And so you got to imagine that the CPAs out there that are doing bookkeeping and taxes, even with the invention of AI, it's still not replacing it because it hallucinates numbers still. And so you still need someone to go look at your taxes before you file it. And so those are really great industries right now. They have a lot of downhill momentum that you can target. But you could definitely do like market macro research. That's what all the PE guys do, right? They look at the market and they see where the CAGR is, and then they make those bets based on the CAGR and those growth curves. But I think at this point, realistically speaking, any service business is a good business right now. I mean, I talk to my friends all across the country, and I don't know a single person that has a good service provider for anything anymore. I mean, there's no good service provider, period. Like you can't find a good house cleaner, you can't find a good lawn care person, you can't find a good anything. There's just really hard. I mean, like my pool cleaning, I started a pool cleaning company 4 years ago. Mostly because I couldn't find a good full service provider, and I just kept going through them and through them and through them, and finally just started my own. And fast forward 4 years later, we're doing $6 million a year, just under the simple premise of show up on time, do a good job, and thank the customer. Common courtesy. And that literally people are so blown away that you provide them common courtesy. And I ask all my friends, and I'm like, what are you doing so special? And I'm like, literally common courtesy. And then they think about it and they're like, I don't know if I have a service provider that does common courtesy anymore. And I'm like, I know, no shit. Yeah, exactly. Right now, it's really hard to find service workers. So if any real service business right now is ripe for disruption, you just have to be nice and have common courtesy, and you will thrive.
Now that makes a lot of sense, and this is for both you and Colleen and everything, because you bring up a good point. I hear too many people that aren't doing simple communications, aren't doing simple follow-up, and all along those lines. So follow-up and communications is also very important. So for both of you, what is your thoughts around that? Because I do agree that too often people are not doing even the follow-up. I mean, I've got thousands of business cards, and I don't know that I've actually followed up with a lot of those. I try to follow up with people on this show and everything like that. But follow-up is something that we oftentimes don't do enough of, and even do something that is common courtesy, even like what you were talking about, Coley, of saying thank you and everything like that. So what is your take, both of you, on this notion of common courtesy? Because it does seem to be a dying trend these days.
It works for me in my niche because I work with people, and it's a people-centric business. So unless you have people skills, you're not going to go very far. You're not going to be invited back. And so when I teach beginning interpreters, thanking people and being kind is basic. That's where we start. And unless you're going to start with that, how do you want to look back on your career 5 years, 10 years, 25 years later, thinking, well, too bad for them, and I wasn't going to do it. Or I have a lot of friends that I made through business that invite me over for dinner now because
Mm.
I'm considering that very thing, which is common sense and courtesy.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
well, go ahead, Young.
I mean, I could just repeat what I said earlier, but I guess the only other variation is that it's not, the counterbalance is that there's not enough young people. So the repopulation rate is shrinking. We had this huge balloon of population count in the generation before, like the silver haired generation. And they're trapped, the biggest wealth is trapped in that generation. And there's less and less people being born in our country. And so you're talking about more people fighting for labor for these jobs from a less populated generational demographic population count. It's inevitable. Like you're going to have a hard time finding service workers, right? And so it's not anybody's fault. Like it's not these kids' faults. Like if they can get a job anywhere. They could literally everywhere's hiring. There's not a single restaurant across the country that isn't hiring. There's not a single fast food shop or house cleaner. Like there's not a single place that isn't hiring right now. It's not a
But
matter
is
of
it?
work.
But Young, isn't part of the problem also division though? Because I mean, like even if you look at what ICE and other people are doing, there's a lot of division, and a lot of people are not going to those jobs because they're afraid of what the consequences may be based on their own immigration status and all along those lines. So it does seem like division has also been a problem as well. So I just wondering, this is for both of you.
Irrelevant of the political landscape, whatever. Just the volume of people that we're talking about is not there to service all of these jobs. It's just not there. We're not repopulating as a world. There's only two countries in this world that are repopulating enough to service the previous generation. It's just math. It has nothing to do with politics or division. It's literally just common sense math. Like you're going to be fighting for service workers because there's just not enough of them. And so if you can provide good service, you are literally head and shoulders above everybody else. You just have to do just a normal amount of common courtesy, and nobody else is doing that because there's not enough workers to service all these people that need services.
Yeah, that makes
So
sense.
yeah,
What do you say
my
to the people?
answer.
What do you say to people that are concerned? We had actually mentioned it earlier. Colin, I think even the doctor when he was on earlier mentioned it because there are a lot of people that are feeling that AI is going to take over some of those service jobs. But it sounds like you're saying that we're still going to need people and everything. So, what is your take for those people that are concerned that AI is going to take over some of these service jobs, including the restaurant jobs?
Yeah, I think it's inevitable. I mean, I used to build robots that robot baristas in my former career, raised a bunch of venture capital to do it. It's inevitable. I mean, you can't, you have not enough young people taking these service jobs. So unless and this is rampant across the country. The whole world is having repopulation problems. So this you still need to service people, and so it's going to be robotics and automation. Like that's the only way to keep up with this stuff. I mean, that's my opinion. Sorry, I should be careful because I'm very opinionated. But um,
No problem.
the reality is that this is an actual thing that's happening across the world. People are just having less kids, and you need to have at least 2.5 kids to actually keep a population in society humming in a normal way. And so if you don't have those numbers and metrics hitting, then you have to supplement it with something because we still need to live and operate in a society in this world. And so I do believe robotics and automations will solve for that, and it will fill in the gaps where it's needed. Will it completely take over? Possibly. I mean, I'm not going to waste any calories worried about it because you can also say I could win the lottery tomorrow. I could also die tomorrow. Like, who knows? I'm not smart enough to understand what that consequence is. I'm going to use the data that I have in front of me and try to make as much money as I can with what I know.
No, that makes sense. You mentioned earlier that you have a goal of 20 businesses, and I've heard a lot of people, including some of the famous performers like Quincy Jones comes to mind, and a number of others come to mind as well that were definitely diversified in their businesses. They might have everything from a beauty shop to a taxi cab to a number of other things. So,
Yeah.
what are these 20 businesses that you have? Because it sounds like you still got four more to go, but what are they in the range of in terms of like what kind of fields are they in doing? Because you mentioned one being a
All
food.
over. Yeah, they're all over. I mean, I will say that I'm unfortunately not independently wealthy, so I can't use my cash to buy these assets and then hire someone to like run the portfolio and then run each individual shop. So I've actually built them all from scratch. I just started doing my first acquisition this year and started purchasing them because now I'm making enough money to do that. But up until 4 years ago, up until last year, for the last 4 years, I've just been blood, sweat, and tears building it myself, finding a business partner, hiring, scaling, making money, reinvesting it and doing it all over and over again. But they range from service businesses like marketing agencies, video production, things like that, all the way to CPG. I have a tattoo cosmetics company, and then I also have trades companies like pool cleaning. I just bought a blinds company, home services like window blinds. And I also own a wall climbing gym, and I'm launching a wellness gym facility in March. And just the range is all over. I mean, I don't really have a specialty. I specialize in operations and finance. So I find business opportunities that are unique, and I think that are leverageable with my skill set, my skill set in operations and finance, and I can have an unfair advantage, and then I apply those unfair advantages into that sector, and I find opportunities that way. So I care less about the business model and more about the leverage. Yeah, like what can I provide unfairly?
Yeah, that makes sense. What brought you into the tattoo field? Because I don't have any tattoos, but I do have family and
Uh,
friends that have tattoos. So
yeah.
what brought you into the tattoo field, and also what brought you into the wall climbing? Because I do know there's a wall climbing outfit here in North Carolina that's very
Yeah.
popular.
My the funny story is that I've been friends with this young lady for many, many years. And I also host a podcast. So I get invited to a lot of these influencer creator events. And we started bumping into each other. And she's an actual influencer. You know, she's really pretty. She's a gorgeous lady. She's like 6'3", Dutch girl, blonde hair, blue eyes, tattoos from the neck down. You know, she just looks so cool and very, very unique looking. And I had the opportunity. We've been building a friendship, and then I had the opportunity to invest in Mad Rabbit, which was a tattoo cosmetics company that was on Shark Tank. And my friend that gave me some allocation to invest, I just said, I'm not. There's tattoos. No one gets tattoos. I mean, why would I invest in a cosmetics? That's a silly business. And then I kind of passed on it. And then the following year, they announced that they did $30 million in annual subscription revenue, like recurring revenue.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, I just like lost a lot. I didn't lose money, but I lost a lot of potential opportunity money. And I was like, I didn't realize there were so many people getting tattoos. And I started researching it. And now 55% of Americans get tattoos. And then of those 55% of Americans, 70% of them get more than one tattoo a year. And my mind was just like blown. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like a huge industry. And so when Kelly, the influencer friend, approached me out of like a couple of years of friendship, she approached me a month or two after I lost this opportunity on the deal. She's like, "Hey, you're like the one business person I know. I'd love to pick your brain. I want to start a tattoo cosmetics company." And I literally just said, "How much do you want?" And I was like, I'll write the check right now. Let's do it. Let's do it like immediately because I felt like so remiss from missing that opportunity to invest in Mad Rabbit. So we started a tattoo cosmetics company.
And what about the wall climbing one? Because, like I said, there's a wall climbing outfit here in North Carolina. I know that those can be very popular.
Yeah,
I was actually just talking to a friend of mine about my brother's attempt to do those Iron Man kind of races, the ones where the ultra races, where it's like 3 or 4 events, and in every case,
yeah.
he broke his leg, so he got out of that field and everything like that. So he tried it for a while, but it
Yeah.
wasn't successful for him. But I do know that those
Well,
wall climbing units can be very popular.
yeah, I never understood the business model. My friend did it and he wanted me to invest, and I did it mostly because of friendship. And then now I love the business model. Now I want to build another one because it's a fascinating model where there's a huge affinity for wall climbing and bouldering, and there's like a whole cult movement around it, right? It's very, very popular. And there's like competitions and there's all sorts of technique, and there's a big loyal cult following for it. But the really fun thing about any gym model, whether it's wall climbing, whether it's gym, health, fitness, wellness, it's just a fascinating model because, in the beginning, the capex is heavy. I mean, you're buying all this equipment and capital expenditure, but the business sucks because for the first couple of years, you get the first early adopters and they come in all the time. So it costs you a lot to service them and you're not paying off the capex and. But then you wait enough years and you get enough members to sign up on a monthly subscription. The profitability just keeps going up and up and up and up and up and up. And it keeps going even past your forecast because nobody shows up. So you sign up 500 people on membership and maybe 50 people use the gym. And so your cost of servicing these 500 people go drastically down once the early adopters get outnumbered by the people that are aspirational. And
Right.
this business model is absolutely maniacal. It's just like so amazing because it just becomes more and more profitable as soon as the capex is paid off. And then as soon as you have enough members, because most of them don't ever show up and it's an aspirational purchase, you just have to basically make more and more profit. You just sit there and wait, and it just starts making you money.
Yeah,
It's a
that
great
makes sense because I
business.
know some young ladies
Yeah.
here in Germany. Yeah, I know some
I
young
was just
ladies here in Germany. They were doing. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
Mark, if you're looking for function expertise on any business, I don't know how to do anything in my businesses. I still don't know how to clean a pool. I still don't know how to wall climb. I still don't have a tattoo. I don't know anything but operations and finance. So if you're asking me questions and you're looking for function expertise, I don't know anything about it.
No, but
Sorry.
you're giving some good stories. You're giving some good narrative, and I appreciate it and everything
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that. Even I know some ladies here that just opened a gym, and they're doing what you're doing. They're finding their footing and everything. There's 3 African American
Yeah.
women. I think it's called Tribal Fitness or something like that along those lines. I'm actually trying to get them on the show in the near future, but they are. Have a good, they say it's location, 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 and they do have a good location. They're in downtown Durham and everything like that. So there is a market of people that are thinking that downtowns, whether it's in Portland, whether it's where you are young and everything like that, but they think that it's a cool location. And so far, they seem to be doing well because a lot of the business is all about location and everything like that. So
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
much is how much is
I don't think
location
I don't
for
know.
you?
I don't agree, but yeah.
No, but that's what we hear all the time is location, 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 and also that it's all right to have
Yeah.
competition even in the same industry. Like there's
It, re-
always a story about
it,
the
re-
McDonald's and the Burger King that are near each other.
it reduces your variables that you have to play with, for sure. Location reduces the variables of like foot traffic and exposure, but then if you just get a less dense location, you have the offset of having less rent cost, and then you have to over index for marketing and distribution or product quality or uniqueness, right? So it just depends, man. I mean, I've been at companies like Phil's Coffee where we intentionally built stores off the main street because we wanted to be the beatnik coffee shop. We wanted to be the non-cool coffee shop. So we would find the busiest street and then we would intentionally go off of it to be like you have to go away from the main area. So we were like the cool kids, and we basically made a really great business off of that whole concept of not being in the main area. It all depends. You just have to over-index for other. It's just math. Just figure out what price you need to make so that there it's more attractive the distance away from it, and
No,
figure
you're
out
right
what you're
about
willing
that
to do
'cause
as a business owner, and yep, and then make the money work.
yeah, you're right about that because as I was telling the 2 other guests, including Coley and everything like that, earlier today I had lunch with a friend of mine and we ate at an Asian restaurant and it is off the beaten path and ironically it has a bamboo grove near it and everything like that. But they have won some accolades being one of our independent, kind of like the Village Voice, but it's a magazine here called The Independent and they've won like the year award. I know they won it last year and
Cool.
they probably
That's
won it this
awesome.
year
Yeah.
but
So
they're
exactly,
definitely off the beaten path. They're not in a
exactly.
location that people would automatically find because it was off the beaten path, and even that bamboo
Yeah.
grove was there. There's a
But
couple of other restaurants near there, but it wasn't like
yeah, but they have
anywhere.
something. They have something cool or unique or different that differentiates them that makes people come. Right. It's exactly. So you're just over-indexing for something else. Yeah. So it's just like think of it like a pie chart, right? So if you have a lot of variables, it's hard for business owners to like comprehend how to make the puzzle work. But if you have locations squared away, then half the pie goes away. You just have the variable. It's just an easier. It's just an easier puzzle. That's why everyone says location, location, location. But you just have to play with the puzzle more if you don't get a prime location. But the benefit of not being in a prime location is that it's cheaper, so you have more
Right.
money to play with. Yeah.
You got more money to play with and everything like that. What got you out of this, Coley, earlier? But what got you into the business world of wanting to do this? Did you come from a group of parents that were entrepreneurs? Like I've been doing media since my parents had a community radio station when I was a preteen. I even did a stencils or like a mimeograph newspaper way back in like I think that was the 5th grade. So I was probably 10. I'm in my early 60s now and everything. But what got you into this whole notion of wanting to be involved in business?
If you're asking me,
Yes.
I would say that's not fair because you also have a great radio voice, so that becomes a natural stepping stone for you to do something in media. Your voice sounds amazing. It's very deep and smooth, and it's nice. Yeah, I like the sound of it. It has a really good attractiveness to it. It's a good voice. For me, yeah, I watched my dad. I watched my dad immigrate here, and when he was 19 years old, and start a little liquor store in the projects in the ghettos. I don't know. And he lived out the American dream. I watched this man brick by brick through hard work and determination move us up a couple levels in the socioeconomic ladder, and I saw the potential and got the bug, kind of planted in the back of my brain on, like the ability to level up and have it be under your control if you took the risk and tested things out. And so it's always kind of stuck with me. And so the moment I turned 18, the moment I became a legal adult, I started the business.
Yeah, that makes sense. How much, this is for both of you, and we'll get ready to wind down in about another 10, 15 minutes and everything like that. But how much do you think the American dream is still a reality? Because I hear people still talking about the Horatio Alger story, those that came up from the bootstraps and all along those lines. But how much do you think that American dream is still out there? And how much do both of you think that you are still living that American dream?
Chloe, do you want to go first?
Yes, sure. Thank you. I have direct experience with Horatio Alger and Oprah. So I'm still doing my job and I'm still getting paid my wage, but I'm amidst all these people that have soared and just skyrocketed into the world stage. And they all came together to help students who couldn't afford college. And so I'm interpreting for one of the students who came to DC, and they showed them around DC, and the group is only a volunteer hub for all these people that want to give back to, whatever their reason or rationale is. They want to give back to these kids who deserve to go to school but can't afford it. And I thought that right there is a good, strong sign. But I don't know how everybody else feels on the outside.
What's your take on it, Young?
I, I, I think that it's stacked against us. I think my dad's an incredible man, and I'm not trying to discount his hard work and his discipline and his rigor because he definitely sacrificed a lot to achieve what he did. But I don't think the country is set for the American dream like it used to be. I think we live in a decay economy, and I think we are catering out our middle class. And it's not by anyone's fault. It's not political. It's not left or right. I think the incentives of our ecosystem and society have created accidentally this K economy where the middle keeps getting lower and the rich keep getting richer. And you see it day in and day out in every metropolitan. I travel a lot for work, and you go to all these major cities and you see it everywhere. And I'm not saying it's impossible to live the American dream, and I'm trying to show that it's possible, but I think it's a lot harder for me than it was for my dad. That's for sure. And I think that we're solving for that. I think there's kind of a reckoning with it, and I think things will start to turn around with, some of the stuff that's happening right now. But as it sits as this moment, I think it's a little less. It's diluted quite a bit. It's hard for people to get up.
Yeah. What do you think the signals are? What do you think the secrets are to achieving that American dream? And I'll start with you, Young, but definitely want to hear from colleagues well. So what do you think the secrets are to achieving the American dream? Because you mentioned that you want to encourage other people to do what you're doing. Maybe not having 20, but this is, even though I've probably got about 5 or 6 businesses that I'm involved with, some that are not mine and everything like that, but I don't have 20, but I do have friends that might be having that many. But what do you think some of the things are that are needed for success?
Gumption, determination, work ethic, at least in the beginning, a propensity for learner's mindset, and just a lack of fear. I mean, I think that especially now, like it's a lot harder than it used to be. So you have to just be willing to ask a lot more people for a sale, or ask a lot more people for advice, or ask a lot more people to work for you. Um, it's just the sheer quantity is just, I think, higher. It's increased, and you have to be okay with that, and you have to be willing to adapt and learn, and just recognize that some of the advice that your um, mentors and the people that have walked in 1,000 miles in your shoes may have a different story. And I'm not saying it's wrong, and maybe I'm the one that's weak and my dad is strong, but I think that you just have to work a little bit harder and a little bit smarter than you used to.
Well, Lindsey Vaughn, who just had that horrible crash, she had this quote that was recently out there that basically she was encouraging everybody to go for their dreams and to not let adversity stop them, even though the adversity did stop her in that last run that she had and everything like that. So I don't know if you saw that quote, but she was definitely encouraging people to go for their dreams and all along those lines. So I was wondering, is that something that more people need to do, is actually realize what their dream is and go for it?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. You should figure out what you're good at first, and figure out what of the things that you're good at someone will pay you the most amount of money for. Make a lot of money, systematize it, learn how to hire people to do that thing and teach them how to do it, so you actually have a cash flow business. Once you solve for one anchor of that, then go follow your dreams. Because now you have cash flow to help you back it up and search for it. Because matching what you're good at, what you love, what people will pay for, and how you can make money, that's a massive puzzle. You should try to solve for two of those before we go to the actual passion side. It's incredibly hard to get all four to match at once, especially when you're risking it in a business. That's my opinion.
Right. That makes sense. What's your take on that, Collie? Because I did see that quote, and I've heard other people get inspired by that. Even though, like I said, she had that dramatic fall. It kind of reminded me of the old Wide World of Sports, the agony of defeat, and everything along those lines. But I was just wondering your take on this notion of get up and go for your dreams, which is what I think she was saying.
I might be an example of Young Han's point. I was first in my family to go to college, and so I'm still working on the American dream. I don't have the proclivity to reach higher and higher because I've dedicated my life to helping people, and we all know that helping people doesn't pay much. But I can't think of anything better I'd rather do. So I'm caught in between it. I love it. I look for it, and I've supported a lot of people who have done it, and you can see their success and their pride and their family, and everything looks good. I'm voting them on. I'm voting you on.
That makes a lot of sense. But what do you say to the people? Because I've got friends of mine that complain about the dream stealers and everything like that. And that's kind of what I was alluding to you earlier, Carly, because you got folks that were wanting to get your expertise, get your knowledge, and things along those lines. I know my good friend Ray Pasco talks about them, and oftentimes is talking about those folks that want the expertise but don't want to pay for the expertise, and he has some nicknames for them and everything like that. And like I said, Dream Stealers is another one that I've heard, but he has a different one that's not coming to my mind right now and everything like that. But what is your notion of these folks that are kind of the sharks in the water that are wanting to take care or even kind of take over your business and everything? I'm sure you've run across that, Young, and even you in your interpreting. So how do you deal with those folks that are sharks in the water?
I think I need some context on what a dream stealer is again. Like, what is that alluding to? What is that referencing?
It's kind of like those folks that are they want you to buy into their dream versus encouraging your own dream. So you have a number of people that will try to get you to buy into whatever their dream or aspiration is. I'll just give an example. I have a couple of friends that realized some of my skill sets and they wanted me to get under their umbrella, not realizing that their dream wasn't necessarily my dream.
I see. So literally a dream stealer. Got it. Okay.
Literally.
I was trying to make it more fancier than it was. Sorry. I think it's hard to say no to people, especially if they're your friends and they're passionate. But I mean, it's just a matter of saying no. But I'd much rather have a dream stealer than as someone that's negative about my dreams. I mean, I call it fountains and drains. Like, I'm constantly parsing out people in my life and qualifying them as a fountain or drain as quickly as I possibly can. So if they're a dreamer like me, I consider them a fountain. I try to help them funnel their energy to be successful, and I try to provide as much value as I can to them and try to associate with them because I want to be around people that are dreaming and inspiring. And if they're drains and they try to tell me it's not possible or it's too hard, you can't do it, or I can't do it because I just try to remove them out of my life as fast as possible. I used to have a lot more time and patience for friends like that, and now I just don't have time. I have to build, and I just don't have I have 24 hours in a day. It's just I don't want to spend even 30 minutes with a dream.
And I'm glad you used that word because that's the word I was trying to remember from my friend Ray Pascal. He talks about those people that are brain drainers. So they will try to drain the knowledge that you have in your brain and everything like that without necessarily giving the rewards and everything like that. So, Carly, have you dealt with those brain drainers, folks that are trying to get this knowledge without necessarily giving you some sort of accolades or some sort of compensation in one form or another? So that's what he was talking about, because I remember he was an event planner, just like I do some event planning. That's one of the jobs that I do and everything like that. And there were people that would literally have you almost give them the whole framework of the concert or whatever they were trying to create. And then when it came back to wanting money, there was no money. He also used to be my friend Ray, the event rental coordinator for one of our art houses. And he was always saying that everybody's a promoter until it's time to cut the check, meaning that everybody's got a great idea for a concert. But then when he went back to them and said, well, in order to have the concert in my venue, it's going to be $2,000, $10,000, whatever the amount was going to be, and everything. They all of a sudden they weren't a promoter anymore because they didn't have it, and all in that sense. So everybody's a promoter until it was time to cut the check, with another one of his famous quotes and everything like that. So, as a sign language person, have you run across that? And I'd love to hear from Young as well.
Well, not really, because where I'm at, I fend off the naysayers and the people who said, well, that's never going to amount to anything. And that's fine, because I'm always needed. There's just not enough interpreters. And so anytime I've ever thought about, well, I can start up my own business as an ASL agency that dispatches interpreters, but there's not enough interpreters. So keep on doing what I'm doing, knowing that my job security is safe, but I don't scale. I don't have the need to scale, because I'm my own machine. I'm a telephone, and everybody uses the telephone.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
It goes right what I think is like, yeah, there's just not enough people to do stuff. Yeah, it's awesome.
There's not enough people to do things and everything like that. But for those people that are thinking about it, because I had asked colleagues this earlier and everything, that are thinking that they want to go into business. Everybody thinks they're an entrepreneur, just like everybody thinks they're an author. And even though not everybody is an author, and all along those lines. But what advice would you give, Young, to those people that are thinking that they want to go into business? I know earlier you said don't do it and everything like that, but what other advice would you give them in terms? Because I'll just give an example just really quickly. I had another guest on this show. I think he was living in the UAE or one of the Middle Eastern countries, but he was a business coach, and he was telling me how some of the businesses didn't even have a mission plan or a business plan, which I find almost next to impossible not to have that and everything like that. And that's both for profits and nonprofits. But he was shocked when people had that. He was also shocked when friends wanted him to finance their businesses without giving him the prospectus of what the business was and everything like that. So those were some mistakes that he was making people aware of. But what are some of the mistakes that you've seen?
Yeah. I used to give a lot of talks at college, my alma mater, and in the business program, and the professors used to hate it, but I actually don't think you need a business plan. I've built multiple $1 million businesses in the last year alone with an email and in a spreadsheet. So I think business plans are kind of a joke, to be honest with you. Just get an idea, get a thought process in place, test it out, and hit the numbers and see what works and what doesn't work. Pivot until you find a good maximization of what your skills are versus what the market needs and what they're willing to pay you. And then once you have that, then build a business plan. It's a lot of wasted effort ideating in your own head for no reason. I could start 4 businesses by the time you finish one business plan, and I'll have the right solution for it. It's just a silly waste of time. It's a huge waste of calories, in my opinion.
Yep.
So my recommendation when people start businesses is that you should interview 100 people in the space that you want to be in. So if you want to be a chef, or let's say you want to open up a bakery, try to interview 100 people that have a bakery business. And this is my recommendation to everybody, because I do this and I feel like I'm a pretty seasoned operator and I'm pretty good at building businesses, and I still do this. And it's so funny to me, because when people ask me to invest in them or help them and I ask them to do this, not a single person can do it. I have yet to meet someone that will actually go through with it. But you have to ask, based on my math, you have to ask 1,000 people to get 100 people to spend time with you so you can interview them. Because you're going to get a lot of no's.
Right.
Like, why would a busy, successful baker take time out of their day to meet with you, some random person? You have to ask a lot of people to get to enough bakers to get them to meet, 100 of them to meet with you. It's a lot of work. But the reason why I tell people to do that is because if you can't do that, you really are going to have a hard time running a business, because that's probably the easiest thing you'll do in the journey of your business entrepreneurship, is getting a 900 no's. So get used to it, do it fast, get it out of the way and do it. So show me that you actually have the mettle to push through and persevere, stay organized, stay disciplined, and work through the no's. That's the number one reason. Second reason I do that is you will learn more from those interviews than you will ever learn from ChatGPT, books, research, studies, or whatever. You will learn a lot from those people. You'll learn nuance, what those people like and don't like, the ins and outs of the industry. You'll learn a lot of like things that are contextual, that are not in papers or in blogs or AI based. And the last thing that happens when you interview 100 people in the space, around 5, sometimes more, but around 5 people will go, I really like you. I don't know why, but I believe you're going to do this. And I like you. I want to be friends. And you have a built-in mastermind group they start this business with. And so almost every business I start with has a small group of 5 people that are just like, you're crazy enough that you're going to pull this off. I like you. I want to be friends. And then you start a little mastermind text group with 5 successful people in the business that you're in, and they give you advice and you go together.
Yeah, in that same realm and everything, you just mentioned two things. One, the word no, because a lot of times people don't understand the power of the word no, and they get too caught up in no and are afraid to hear that word no and everything like that. But you also mentioned this notion of you got to be a little bit crazy to get into entrepreneurial field and everything like that. Because every business owner that I talk to, they've either had hardships or they've had a little bit of craziness in their mindset. So, what is your thoughts around that, Young, and everything? Because I've known quite a few owners and business owners, and a lot of them have a little touch of insanity and everything like that, or they've had in life, everything like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to be determined, yeah, and you have to be um, a little aggressive and a little confident. I mean, it's definitely harder. It can be harder, and I think Coley has figured out a good balance in how he does it. So it sounds like he has a good client list and an abundance of leads, and he just has his happiness with what he services. So that's really great. Great too because the business works for him and his lifestyle. But um, minus Coley and the one-off cases like that where they understand who they are and they know what they want from their business. Most business owners do need to be a little rough. You need to be a little tough because it takes a while to figure out how to get to your point. Like um, it's not doesn't happen magically, and maybe even Coley has had to work through it. I'm sure he's had to work through to massage it to this point where he feels I have a good client list. I know exactly how much I want to work to be happy for my mental, physical. Like you sound like you have a really balanced life, and so I'm sure it took work to get there, and you have to be a little crazy and courageous to do that.
Yeah. Along the same line, Young, and then I'll get ready to maybe ask just that question I asked Coley earlier that I asked everybody, and then we'll wrap everything up. But how do you deal with that work-life balance? Because I asked Coley and I asked the doctor that earlier. How do you deal with that work-life balance? Because that is something that I quite often talk about here on this online dinner party. And sometimes, because I'm 64, well, I'll be 64 in July and still in that single space. So I don't know that I ever discovered the work-life balance and everything like that. So how do you work-life balance?
That's awesome. I don't believe in work life balance. I think it's a fallacy, and I think we should stop trying to protect it. I feel like we're human beings. We're not robots. I mean, just the simple fact that if I have a bad argument with my wife, no matter how disciplined I am, I'm gonna have her in the back of my mind when I'm doing sales calls or work calls. She's gonna be back there. And if I have a bad work day, no matter how awesome I want to be for my daughters and my kids and my family, it's gonna hang over in the back of my head. I can't shake that last 5% or 2%. My face will look good and I'll act cool, but it's not gonna be 100%. Like just from that simple fact alone, if you believe that's true, that simple fact alone makes work-life balance kind of bullshit because you're carrying it integrated between your lives. If something good or bad happens, it carries over. It's almost impossible to have this perfect balance. It's like you should just think about life as work-life integration. Just do what you need to do and try to balance all the things in your life, what is important to you, family, work, health, whatever. Build it all in and just incorporate it and mix it in and just make the best of everything. And do your best in like time boxing it and protecting it in allocations of hours. But I don't think that you should have a linear mindset on like, oh, this is work time and then this is dedicated this time. And like, I think that that's really, really hard because business doesn't work like that. Neither does life. It doesn't. My parents are getting sick. My wife's parents are getting sick. We didn't plan for that. It completely changes our entire work-life balance. There's no work-life balance anymore because we have this new variable to deal with that we could never have possibly foreseen or planned for.
Right.
Business is like that. Life is like that. Families like that. Like there's no balance. It's just crazy to me that we try to do this in America. It's like the weirdest ideology in my mind. It's just so illogical.
Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense for a lot of people and everything like that. So, the question I got everybody to answer, and I want to hear from you, Young, is how can people get in touch with you if you got any book or product that you want to let folks know about? And the question I get all my guests to ask, and Coley answered it earlier, is your message of that you want to give in terms of message of positivity. Because I definitely am a believer in positivity. So I've probably had close to 1,000 guests, and they've all given their own variation of positivity in these few years 5 years now that I've been doing this show and everything like that. So if you'll give a
Yeah.
message of positivity, I would definitely appreciate that as well because it is a
Oh,
global.
thank you for the opportunity to do so. What a great way to end the podcast. Share positivity. That's amazing. That's a fountain-esque person would say that. That's a very fountain-esque thing to say. So the best way to reach me is alwayshan.com. So it's always Han is my last name, HAN. It's a plural, so always on. It's a play on words. It's my dad joke because I'm always on. I don't believe in work-life balance. I believe in work-life integration, and so always on is my website. From there, you can go to my weekly newsletter or fill out the little widget you do, and it'll give you the best way to work with me depending on what you need. And then my stroke of positivity is you really try to figure out what makes you happy and really reverse engineer it and start today. Start today and like really doing the deep work to figure out what moves you, what makes you fulfilled, what stirs your cup, what riles you up, and something that you want to fight for and do that work now. It's never too late. I mean, I started when I was 40 years old, and I'm pushing 50, and I'm completely reinventing myself. It's never too late to do it, and you can do it, and you can completely change who you are. Human beings are very, very malleable. We're very, very we're very tough and resilient creatures, and if you want something bad enough, it should be happiness, and you should figure out that what makes you happy and reverse engineer how to get there.
That makes sense. I'm glad you mentioned reinventing, because a friend of mine is actually engaged to another friend of mine. That's actually her podcast is she does a whole thing about reinventing, because reinventing Imagine, but that's Jess Avahart, and Dasana Hanu is her fiance, but they are both in that business space and reinventing themselves. As a matter of fact, they're reinventing themselves as a couple, because both of them have been in previous relationships, and now they're getting ready to get married, I believe, later on this year and everything like that. But Jess is an amazing business coach and does a lot of business stuff as well. But I know she has reinvention in one of her podcast titles, if not the main podcast, and everything like that. Just as we get ready to get out of here, I have a video that I play every time at the end of this particular show. It's about education and the importance of education, and even the support staff, whether that's guidance counselors, whether that's even the janitor and the cafeteria worker in the school system, and all along those lines. So, Holly and Young, if you'll give a message of support for the teachers as well, or something that maybe a teacher inspired you when you were in school, whether it was college or high school. And then I'll play this video from Tulsa, Oklahoma, where they are honoring some of those teachers, and then that'll get us totally out of here. And then I've got other shows to do for this network later on. But in terms of the online dinner party, this will be this episode for the 11th and everything like that. So any teachers that have really influenced you and that you want to talk about?
We heart teachers. Love them. Can't do without them.
Yeah, teachers are great. It's a huge role and a huge impact and influence on our youth. So love them. Especially my Spanish teacher. Yeah, she was great.
Spanish teacher was yours. Yeah. I had a couple teachers who were real good, including a journalist teacher. I had George Reedy, who was the press secretary for LBJ, but I also had a teacher there when I was in Marquette that actually had me go out into the community and actually do some in the field reporting, and I definitely appreciated her, even though I can't remember her name, and the teacher in high school that had me on the newspaper staff, and the one that was in the drama department as well. So there was a number of teachers that I've had that have influenced me. But I love what this gentleman does to salute teachers, but also the support staff, because like I said, my grandmother was a cafeteria worker on my mother's side, and my grandmother on my dad's side actually started the first African-American library in Raleigh. So teachers and the support staff, whether it's guidance counselors, because that was my mom's first job after college and everything, or the janitor, because I actually wrote a short skit that was called The Confessions of a Buppy, but it was a Buppy that went out into the field after car broke down, and he wound up learning lessons from the bum on the street, from some other people that he ran into, and the last person he ran into was the janitor at his office. Because as you know, Jan, as well as Han, as well as Coley, a lot of times it's the people that are behind the scenes, the secretaries and the janitors, that are the ones really in control of the businesses, because they know a lot more than we give them credit for, and all along those lines. So that's kind of what that was about. But this is his salute to those people and everything. So I'll play this in and get us on out of here. I enjoyed both of you guys being on, as well as the one I had on before as well. So thanks for being on, and hopefully I'll get you all on some future shows as well. But I learned a lot about sign language, about business in general, but definitely appreciate it.
Thank you, Mark.
No problem.
Thank you. That was awesome.
Yep.
I want to thank everyone for coming to the 2020 TAF Awards. This was a show like no other, people. This is the Grammys for dignitaries, educators and support staff around the state of Oklahoma and worldwide. We cannot do this without the support of the people. So we thank you, I thank you for being such a dedicated supporter to this movement for the Teachers Appreciation Foundation. I thank you.
I won't fold.